Testing, mic check. Mic gate check. I need my phone. I don't have my phone. We're not ready. I have 1:40. I'll be right back. All right, found that in less than a minute, or probably exactly 1 minute. Either way, that's pretty impressive. Breathing into the mic is less impressive, but I'm here. I'm here, and that's what matters. I might have to turn off my mic and catch my breath. Let's see. Let's move it to Isn't Elizabeth. This is Dr. Park Dietz. That. Ooh, okay. Oh, there's a couple of montages of animals. Put them away for now. Hello. Welcome to day 18 of the Betty Broderick Marathon. I'm your host, Dan D. No, I didn't throw things together. I've been sitting here for the last hour, 2 hours, just madly typing away at my bloody keyboard, getting things ready. Don't be fooled. So, a couple of housekeeping notes. One is today's show is going to be exactly 3 hours and 40 minutes long. Well, maybe not exactly, but I can't go much longer than 3 hours and 45 minutes today. I have a family event that I will be going to immediately after this broadcast. So that's the bad news. Good news, Dr. Park Dietz, he doesn't finish his testimony in today's video either. It picks up in the next video, so whatever we're not able to get to, it will still be part of the Park Dietz testimony that we start with tomorrow. Tomorrow at this time exactly. Tomorrow, there's no fucking around. Tomorrow, we're going to do it. We're going to get through tomorrow's video, plus anything that's remaining from this. We should get through this okay. I think I've got about, well, this is a 4 hour and 19 minute video, so we're definitely not getting through it, but we'll look for a natural break, and I'm going to turn off the mic while I catch my breath and let Mr. Park Dietz introduce himself. Thank you all for being here. Saw Kitten Pusher was in the door, very first one here. Ocean Sounds closely behind. And I will say hello to the rest of you when we're on the other side.
What is forensic psychiatry?
Forensic psychiatry is the application of the principles and practice of psychiatry to the purposes of law. In other words, it is psychiatry designed to be used for legal purposes.
I did miss his introduction. We'll go to right there. I did post a link with, it's not the most engaging interview with Dr. Park Dietz, but it was very, it's a John Hopkins educational lecture, and it's almost like an extended resume for him. It's very impressive, his credentials and all the different people he's worked with. Yeah, Dr. Park Dietz. Okay, here we go.
Good morning, Dr. Dietz.
Good morning.
What is your profession?
I'm a psychiatrist, and I limit my practice to forensic psychiatry.
What is forensic psychiatry?
Forensic psychiatry is the application of the principles and practice of psychiatry to the purposes of law. In other words, it is psychiatry designed to be used for legal purposes, to try to answer legal questions.
Dr. Dietz, could you describe for the jury your education that prepared you for this sort of endeavor?
Certainly. I had my undergraduate education at Cornell University in Ithaca, New York, and there received a degree in 1970 in psychology and biology. In 1975, I received an MD degree, a Doctor of Medicine, from the Johns Hopkins University School of Medicine in Baltimore. In the same year, I also received a master's degree in public health from Johns Hopkins. At that time, I'd done the coursework for PhD, that is, at Doctor of Philosophy in sociology. And years later, when I finished a dissertation, I received that PhD as well. But in 1975, I began my special training as a physician.
Hello, Cowboy.
Additional
Welcome to the
training that you
chat.
had, Doctor.
Well, I spent 2 years as an assistant resident in psychiatry at the Johns Hopkins Hospital in Baltimore. And then I spent a third year as resident in psychiatry and the chief fellow in forensic psychiatry at the Hospital of the University of Pennsylvania in Philadelphia. And that was the end of my formal residency training.
Welcome,
Doctor, are you
Elizabeth.
board
All the
certified in the practice of
Elizabeths.
psychiatry.
Yes, I am.
What does that mean?
Victoria
Board
Carmen's here.
certification is a procedure for ensuring that those who hold themselves out for a particular specialty have met certain qualifications. And it requires proof of having done the necessary training and submitting to 2 examinations, a written exam and an oral exam.
Deep Guy Stamey, Charles
Dr. Dietz,
Grieve.
is there some sort of difference between psychiatrists and their training and psychologists and their training in this area of medical, the practice of medicine?
Yes, there are.
What is that?
Well, one of the differences is that in psychiatry, one must first become a physician and go through medical training. And then the specific psychiatric training is obtained during a residency program treating patients in hospitals for 3 years. Whereas in psychology, it's a PhD program directed toward learning about psychology. And those who focus on clinical psychology will usually do an internship to get training in actually seeing or treating or evaluating patients. It's a different focus.
Dr. Dietz, could you tell the jurors what positions you've held and what they entail?
My first position after residency was as an assistant professor of psychiatry at the Harvard Medical School.
Harvard's where Dan went.
McLean Hospital, which is a private psychiatric hospital that Harvard operates. At least administratively, I was based there, but my assignment was at the Bridgewater State Hospital for the Criminally Insane, which is a maximum security institution operated by the Department of Correction. And the task was to try to turn this somewhat infamous institution into a Harvard teaching hospital. And I'm sorry to say it's a task at which we did not succeed, but we tried. My time there was 2 years actually working at this security hospital. And then I had the opportunity to spend my third year at Harvard doing something rather unusual. I spent the entire year evaluating John Hinckley on behalf of the United States Attorney's Office. in
Shot
Washington,
Reagan.
in connection with the charges arising from his attempt to assassinate President Reagan. So for a year, he was my practice evaluating Mr. Hinckley and advising the government about him. I
Labs for
did a
Dummies.
few research projects during that year as well, but he was really my practice.
That's
And
the
then my fourth
salesman.
year at Harvard, I spent conducting research primarily on mentally disordered offenders and had a subcontract from what had been a violence grant from the Justice Department to the University of Pennsylvania. And my work was focused on mentally disordered offenders who commit battery or who commit homicide. After those 4 years, I then accepted a position at the University of Virginia, which had invited me to become the medical director of its Institute of Law, Psychiatry, and Public Policy, which was a program operated and still is by the University of Virginia Law School and Medical School and by the Commonwealth of Virginia, and which helps draft legislation, which trains students in both law and medicine and the various health professions, and which operates a clinic, a forensic psychiatry clinic, where evaluations are conducted. And
Super Kelly G,
while I was
A
at
to B.
Virginia, I was half-time in the law school and half-time in the medical school, originally as an associate professor and later as a full professor of law, and also as a professor of behavioral medicine and psychiatry. I taught courses for law students on psychiatry and criminal law and on criminal behavior, on criminal violence. And in the medical school, I taught forensic psychiatry and trained fellows who are young psychiatrists in training to become forensic psychiatrists. And I was in charge of the evaluations conducted at the forensic psychiatry clinic for the university. I'd had a training program also at Harvard, a fellowship program, but it was smaller in scale than the one at Virginia.
Charles Grieve, Cowboy
After,
Criminology.
Having done that for 6 years, I took
Melody
a sabbatical
Kate.
to conduct research and write, and moved to California at that time, and then didn't return to Virginia. Decided to stay in
Scripsy.
Southern California. And so for the last 3 years, I've been based in Newport Beach. And today I am a clinical professor of psychiatry and biobehavioral sciences at UCLA, which means that I teach part-time there. It's not a full-time job. And I also am a consultant regularly to the FBI Academy in Quantico, Virginia, and to the New York State Police Forensic Sciences Unit. Most of my time, however, is spent as a consultant to law enforcement agencies and attorneys, occasionally courts and corporations in matters dealing with aberrant behavior, most often criminal behavior.
Wow, that's quite a
Doctor,
resume.
you conducted any research in the field of psychiatry?
Yes, I have.
In what particular areas?
And you got to remember, this is his 1991 resume. So the video I posted just recently, he's, 30 years older in that video. Everything he just mentioned, he probably mentioned that in the first minute because he has so much more that he's done since then. But yeah, the Menendez brothers, Richard the Iceman Kuklinski, who was a mob hitman in New York, he did an interview with. Unabomber. Jeffrey Dahmer appeared in his trial. We're getting a lucky glimpse at a prolific expert witness here. And all the comments I saw in this video was people super excited to be hearing a young Park Dietz on the stand.
Well, all of my research has to do with the
Thank you for
extremes
being
of
here,
behavior.
Cowboy.
Primarily, it's antisocial behavior and criminal behavior of various kinds.
Have you published in the scientific literature?
Yes, I have.
And how does that differ, let's say, from writing magazine articles?
Well,
Joan
for one
Crawford.
thing, in the scientific,
Yes, Charles Grieve is suggesting these are Joan Crawford Mummy Dearest eyebrows. Super Kelly G suggested they may have been from the 90s and belonging to Super Kelly G. A to B says maybe those are Wendy Adelson's eyebrows.
literature, the purpose is to share research results rather than to entertain or to inform or the broader public. And so a portion of the scientific literature requires that one do rather thoughtful and careful research, and that the work that one submits for publication be reviewed by peers, people who have some knowledge of that field, and who decide whether it's acceptable to publish, whether the thinking is done well enough, whether the methods are accurate enough to warrant publication. Those are called peer-reviewed journals, and there's no payment for that, but it's considered an important part of one's career and an important contribution to make. It's how one contributes. There are other parts of the professional literature that aren't quite that way. People do get book royalties for some of their writings, but largely it's not done for the financial rewards, but to communicate and to show that one's leading to some greater understanding of an aspect of the world.
I take it you published in these you published peer review articles.
Yes, I have.
Have you written a number of books and reports?
Yes.
Could you tell us about that just briefly?
Briefly?
Well, I edited a book on psychotherapy some years back. I wrote a book on an odd way in which people manage to kill themselves. And I've written lengthy reports on mentally disordered offenders and on individuals who harass and stalk other people.
So you've written a book on suicide, is that correct?
On suicide, no.
Oh, I thought you said on the way people kill themselves.
Well, it's not exactly suicide.
Okay. Have you written any chapters in books published by other people or edited by other people?
Yes, perhaps 15.
And was one of these a chapter on patterns in human violence?
So just to clarify there, what other ways people can kill themselves, he originally was interested in injuries, and there was a researcher who did a paper about just injury prevention, and he thought, is there a way that we could prevent intentional injuries, basically, crimes, but also, people hurting themselves, all of this. And it was an interesting way to look at it, but from a medical psychiatric perspective, it made sense. And so he's an innovator in the field. And yeah, looking at the way people hurt themselves doesn't always mean, or, even kill themselves. Sometimes it's everything from, high risk behavior, like looking at people who, decide to go cliff diving or, engage in risky behavior it's inherently dangerous.
It was included in the American Psychiatric Association annual review.
Yes.
Another one, defenses against dangerous people when arrest and commitment fail. I'm sorry. Defenses against dangerous people when arrest and commitment fail.
Yes.
And that was in the American Psychiatric Press Review of Clinical Psychiatry and the Law.
Yes.
And there are numerous other ones we probably don't want to take the time to get into.
Right.
Have you edited any professional publications?
Well, yes, I've edited some special issues of journals on violence or criminal behavior, and I've also been on the editorial boards of a number of journals, mostly in the forensic sciences and in psychiatry and law.
Have you done any lectures,
Yes.
both nationally and internationally?
Yes, I have.
Approximately how many times?
There are about 150 occasions when I've gone somewhere to give a special lecture or address at a national meeting or at someone's invitation to give a lecture somewhere. That's not including the teaching that's been my job.
And have you ever testified in a court of law as an expert witness before?
Yes, I have.
In which particular states?
I think it is 40 or 45 states that I've testified in. I haven't done the Dakotas. There are a couple others.
Would this be both civil and criminal cases that you testified in?
Yes.
Not the
In the area
Dakotas.
of criminal
That's
case testimony, approximately how many times have you testified?
In the trial phase, I believe it's been hundreds, but I don't have any accurate way to count.
Are you hired just by the defense or just by the prosecution?
No.
saying that you testified in every state except the Dakotas is like in Canada saying that you've, worked in every province except North Saskatchewan. Nobody's worked in North Saskatchewan.
Say the last two cases, who did you testify for?
The last two were both for the defense.
Have you also been employed by the defense and prosecution?
Apologies to those who are working in North Saskatchewan. I didn't mean to demean your contribution to the Canadian economy.
Various states as a consultant where you didn't testify.
Yes.
Now, you mentioned the John Hinckley case. Are there a few other just notable cases that you can tell the jury about that you testified in?
Yes, there are.
Did you have something to do with a Tylenol tampering situation?
Yeah.
I was involved originally in an investigative capacity.
He mentioned that in the video I posted too, but he was working with the guy, I think, that eventually solved it, because in the video I posted, he was talking about how that was one of the earliest things he worked on, was the mindset of a person who would poison random people through Tylenol.
On behalf of the FBI, but later I became involved on behalf of Johnson & Johnson and did testify in that connection.
Big Netflix documentary about that I've seen. I'm sure there might be other places now too, but if you're interested, lots of information about the Tylenol murders in the mid-'80s, maybe early '80s.
What about the Robert Chambers case?
I had a small role in that. The district attorney's office in Manhattan consulted me, and I was prepared to testify if the need arose.
What was that about?
That's the one that became known as the Preppy murders.
Arthur Shawcross, did you have any connection with his case?
Yes, I did.
What was that, please?
I evaluated him and testified
Hey, politically incorrect, welcome.
in his trial. That was a serial killer case in upstate New York.
And was there a case about
Sorry, Beth.
a Fortune magazine you were involved in?
Yes.
What was that about?
That was a lawsuit in connection with a murder of a Texas housewife that had been commissioned through a classified advertisement in Soldier Fortune magazine, in which a man was offering to commit crimes.
Hey, Carolina.
And was there a rather recent case involving a federal judge being killed by a bomb?
Yes, that's the Roy Moody case. Mr. Moody has now been convicted of having sent mail bombs to NAACP offices in
Bella's
two
mom,
locations,
good to see ya.
and to a civil rights lawyer who died as a result of it, to a federal judge, appellate court judge who died as a result. And I worked on that case for the Justice Department.
What was your connection with that case?
I'm going to put up a poll, but I'm still getting my pinned comments at the bottom. We'll find out how many of you it's the same, but Kitten Pusher has them at the top. There'll be less pinned comments until that becomes a common feature. The pin should be at the top, and that's how we're passively rebelling against this unwelcome change.
The special prosecutors for the U.S. Department of Justice asked me originally to help investigate the case, and later I had a role of evaluating Mr. Hinckley and testifying for the government at his trial.
Now, were you hired by the people to evaluate the mental condition of the defendant in this case?
Yes.
What does a psychiatrist such as yourself look for in making such an evaluation?
Well, it depends on the specific question that's asked, but the general areas that are inquired into when there's a question of whether someone has any mental disorder is to determine whether the individual suffers from any of the mental diseases, mental illnesses on the one hand, and also to look at whether there are any patterns in their behavior of a kind that we recognize get people into various kinds of difficulties. So the principal focus is to look for mental disease on the one hand and to look for maladaptive patterns of behavior on the other.
Did you find in this case any evidence of mental disease or illness?
No, I did not find evidence of mental disease or mental illness.
What did you find?
I found a great deal of evidence consistent with opinions that others had reached, that Mrs. Broderick suffers from a personality disorder.
Oh, yeah.
And just generally, what do you mean when you say personality disorder?
Well, a personality disorder is a lifelong pattern of behavior in which the individual responds to the world in particular ways. There are various personality disorders that have been described. We have a classification of them. It's one that changes from time to time when we update the classification system. But there's some consensus among mental health professionals as to the ways in which to describe the kinds of personalities that get people into problems. Each of the personality disorders represents a persistent pattern of behaving that either causes the person some distress, that is, that they're never happy enough, or else causes problems for those around them. And these can be serious enough to lead people to get fired from jobs, or to lead to divorce, or to lead to being thrown out of school, or to lead to being put in jail. It depends on the circumstances what happens, but they are persistent patterns of behaving. And those are recognized as being quite different from mental illnesses. In mental illnesses, individuals have kinds of symptoms that are different from what ordinary humans experience. In the mental illnesses, individuals have symptoms that people do not normally have any semblance of, such as hearing voices that aren't present, or seeing things that aren't there, or believing that the CIA is implanting electrodes in one's teeth. Those are things that normal people don't think are happening to them. Only if they're on drugs or mentally ill do they have those experiences. The personality disorders, on the other hand, are very much like things that we see in everyday life. And nothing that occurs to people with personality disorders mentally is fundamentally different from the rest of human experience. But rather, they have these patterns of acting that cause problems for themselves or others.
Now, Doctor, in reaching this opinion, did you review any material?
Yes.
Yes.
That was provided to you by the prosecution?
Yes.
And before me on let's say, my side of
You can tell he's an expert witness because he knows, the next question will come. He doesn't need to say, yes, I did a paper on XYZ. He just says yes, and the lawyer follows up with it. But a lot of those questions, like, have you ever done any research on this? Yes.
the desk here, Is that the material that you reviewed in
13 Mandy, he just got in the door. He basically just started talking about his resume 15 minutes ago, and he's mentioned that he's diagnosed Betty with a personality disorder. So he's just scratched the surface on his testimony towards Betty. Extensive resume. And this is before he's done 90% of the stuff that we might have been aware of that he did coming in.
preparation for rendering an opinion in this case?
Those 3 stacks of material and a little more that I have here are materials that my office received and which were reviewed by my associate and me in preparing this case.
Did you review the police reports in this case?
Yes.
Cowboy Criminology, I don't know if you've been following through the whole trial, but interesting thing that we've noted, the defense's witnesses were just sitting in the gallery listening to each other testify. There was at least 4 or 5 that all got very similar questions and got to hear the answers from the other ones who were testifying before them. Any opinion on that?
And the prosecution investigative reports?
Yes.
And the defense investigation reports?
Yes.
And the psychological testing of the defendant was done between, I think, 1986 and 1990?
That's right.
And the prior psychological reports that were generated on the defendant between 1983 and 1990?
Yes, Kitten
Yes.
Pusher. I've just changed screens
the
for you.
trial transcript, did you review that?
Yes.
Hey, Candace.
And the depositions of Drs. DeVos and Nelson that were taken about a year or a month before the killings?
Yes.
And it's Dietz, 100%,
And the
Mandy.
other
You
various
got it.
Documents that were filed in the divorce case?
Yes.
Did you review the defendant's marriage encounter notebook
Yes.
and this book or manuscript that she wrote in February of 1988?
Yes.
Her diaries
Yes.
and a transcript of her prior trial testimony in the first trial
Yes.
and the testimony of all the psychiatric experts that testified in the first trial
Yes.
and the testimony of both the defendant's daughters, Lee and Kim Broderick, that testified in the first trial.
Yes.
Did you review anything in the present trial in terms of the trial testimony transcripts?
Yes.
Did you review the defendant's testimony, both direct and cross-examination?
I haven't read all of her cross-examination from this trial because of the timing of receiving the transcripts, but I've read most of it.
Did you review the testimony of Dr. DeFrancesca?
Yes.
Now, as we can see, that's quite a bit of material. Of how was it that Dr. Lippian helped you with this?
Well, originally, Dr. Lippian, who was my associate, met with both Mr. Burkhoff and Ms. Wells to discuss what the timing of the case would be, to look at what sorts of issues might be raised, and then to request what documents and materials we wanted to look at. At that initial meeting, I had the opportunity to review photographs as well, and I directed Dr. Lippian to begin reviewing some of the documents while I reviewed others of them, and asked him to prepare summaries for me of particular documents illustrating certain features and to call to my attention anything of any psychiatric significance. And we then went through a process whereby we were able to get through this large quantity of material and to extract from it everything of psychiatric significance and to formulate some preliminary opinions about the case. These we discussed, and I went back and looked at original documents where there was any question of what had been going on. And the end product of that was to form opinions that are specific to this case and which are supported by the evidence.
Is Dr. Lippian another psychiatrist?
Yes, he is.
And he associates with you and works closely with you on cases such as this?
That's right.
Now, did you have the opportunity to personally interview the defendant?
The little bit of static is from the original recording. Sorry, there's nothing I can do about that.
In this case.
No, I did not.
Did you, however, review other things?
Court listener, you found the appeal docket for this case? Interesting. Let me know, was it just dismissed outright? Can you see that from the docket that you're looking at? Politically incorrect? Because my understanding is Betty did file an appeal, but it wasn't heard in court. It was just denied. Like I expect Sarah Boone's appeal will be denied.
Instead of interviewing the defendant.
Correct.
Can you tell us about that?
Well, besides the documents that I've already mentioned, which include, of course, many descriptions about Mrs. Broderick's behavior by mental health professionals, by family members, and by others.
So unlike Dr. Julie Harper, he read her files. That's a great way to find out more about the person you're testifying about. Good for you, Mr. Dietz. I guess Julie Harper forgot about that 35 years later. Maybe 32 years later.
And besides reading what she's written and had to say, I also had occasion to observe her testimony for a portion of this trial, for a morning that I came and observed her testify. I've had occasion to see her testimony in a videotaped segment from the previous trial. And I had occasion to consult with Dr. Goldsband, who had examined the defendant in connection with the preceding trial.
Do you know Dr. Goldsband and his qualifications?
Yes, I know him very well.
And what is your opinion of Dr. Goldsband?
I hold.
Did you
He's an
listen to any
asshole.
audio tapes that were part of this case?
Yes, I did.
Can you tell us about that?
Yes, I listened to the audio tapes that are within these materials that are conversations between the defendant and Rhett, or the defendant and Danny, or that are taped messages left on the answering machine at their home. And I've listened to those and also have reviewed transcripts of those messages.
Do you feel the lack of this personal interview with the defendant limits you, in your opinion, under these circumstances?
Well, I think that not having an interview does limit in some ways what areas one can form opinions about. I wouldn't be in a position to talk about her mental state at certain times after the crime when I might otherwise have seen her. But I don't think it limits my ability to talk about her personality or whether she had diseases or her general mental condition in the past. Because in this case, there's so much other evidence.
The things we just talked about?
Yes.
Why would that other evidence be better than talking to the defendant, let's say, a couple of years after the killings?
Well, it isn't always better to have old documentary evidence, but sometimes it is. One advantage, of course, is that there are contemporaneous observations in those records that reflect what happened at the time, as opposed to someone's recounting of it sometime later.
Which is why journals that are truly journals are much better than journals that are composed 30 years after the fact without dates and based entirely on someone's recollections. I'm going to file that up here in case it applies to any other cases that I'm interested in.
Another issue, of course, is that people charged with serious crimes do not always tell the truth. And so having observations from many...
Let's just rewind that too, because it is key.
Years after the killings.
Well, it isn't always better to have old documentary evidence, but sometimes it is. One advantage, of course, is that there are contemporaneous observations in those records that reflect what happened at the time, as opposed to someone's recounting of it sometime later. Another issue, of course, is that people charged with serious crimes do not always tell the truth. And so having observations from many people, especially those who were witnesses more proximal to events, is at least important and often a better source of information than defendants themselves.
Wow, what revolutionary, what a revolutionary idea. That's Julie Harper. We should, well, no, we're not harassing anyone, but she should definitely see this. I was going to suggest like we send links to this to whatever her, but no, don't do that. Because bullying is a serious thing on YouTube. So if you're actually intentionally harassing people and stuff, no good. But really feels like she would do well to watch any Dr. Park Dietz testimony, I think.
Now, is there a difference between a clinical and a forensic evaluation?
Yes, there is.
Can you tell us the difference, please?
Well, a clinical evaluation is one done for purposes of treating someone, whereas a forensic evaluation is done for purposes of answering some question that the law asks. In the clinical evaluation, the historical truth does not matter so much. What matters is how patients perceive, how they feel, what they think, and what can be done to help them. That's the therapist's goal, is to help the patient. In the forensic evaluation, the goal of the evaluator is to find out the truth about some specific question of interest to the law. How people felt or what they need in the future or what can help them in the future is not relevant. It's not the point, except insofar as those things can help explain what happened at those times that are of interest to the law. So the central difference is that the clinical exam is for the purpose of helping people. Clinical evaluation is for that purpose. forensic evaluation is not for that purpose. It's not to help them. It's to help legal decision makers find out the truth about events.
Dr. Goldsband's evaluation of the defendant, you spoke to him about that?
Yes, I did.
Was that a clinical or a therapeutic evaluation?
Dr. Goldsband did a forensic evaluation.
I'm sorry, it's a forensic versus a clinical evaluation. Is that correct?
That's right.
Can you tell us whether or not you agree with and adopt Dr. Goldsband's opinion of the defendant's mental condition?
Yes, I agree with his central opinions, and do adopt those and rely on his diagnosis.
And what is that you're adopting?
Dr. Goldsband diagnosed the defendant as having what he termed a mixed personality disorder with narcissistic and histrionic features. I think I would have phrased it rather differently, but it's the same point, which is narcissistic personality disorder and histrionic personality disorder. He also pointed out that there were times that she was depressed, and I think that that's correct.
Doc?
Yeah, this guy's very educational, 13 Mandy. She just learned about the difference between clinical and forensic evaluation. He's definitely one of those witnesses that we're all going to feel smarter after his testimony, as opposed to some other witnesses that we watch in trials. Speaking of which, I was watching the Shannon Burgess.
Of water.
You had to clarify? Oh, yeah, I'd love a drink. Everybody's amused. Look at the... It's low resolution, but the prosecution loves this guy.
I'm glad you added that. Doctor, what is a narcissistic personality?
Betty Broderick hasn't met Sarah Boone yet.
Well, a narcissistic personality disorder, a narcissistic personality is an individual who is very full of himself or herself. That is prideful, very focused on being important, needing to be admired and respected by other people, and who has certain attributes which can become problematic in life. Where they do, then it's known as a narcissistic personality disorder. In that situation, where it is a narcissistic personality disorder, the central characteristics really are three. The first is that the individual...
Ooh, so let's, just for funsies, any of us that are familiar with the Sarah Boone case, if he's going to be given definitions, we know he's applying it towards a generalized description. But if it sounds like Sarah, it sounds like he knows what he's talking about. So let's listen to him describe a narcissistic personality disorder.
Tends to have what people would commonly refer to as a swollen ego, a big ego. The technical language for that is someone who has a sense of grandiosity. The second characteristic is that such people really can't recognize how other people feel about things, and we call that a lack of empathy. It's not quite the same as not having sympathy. It's not being able to see it through the other fellow's eyes, not being able to feel or recognize what other people would feel. And the third characteristic is being thin-skinned about criticism, which we refer to as hypersensitivity.
Bing, bing, bing. Like, if that's all that it takes to diagnose narcissistic personality disorder, I don't know why they were so hesitant to say, well, she has narcissistic traits. It's like slam dunk.
Sensitivity to the evaluation of others. And each of the formal features of narcissistic personality disorder can be understood as reflecting that swelled ego or thin skin or not being able to feel what other people will.
That's constantly, that's Sarah's rest state. Like, some people have resting bitch face. She has resting narcissistic personality disorder.
Doctor, how does a psychiatrist know what to look for in determining whether or not somebody has a narcissistic personality disorder?
Well, different clinicians and experts will do this in different ways, but the agreed upon language that we share is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual Classification. That's a book that's published by the American Psychiatric Association, in which the various mental disorders are classified. Both the diseases are in there and the personality disorders. And the book provides a description of how people behave who have the different kinds of disorders. And it also gives specific criteria. That is, it lists those things that must be there before the diagnosis can be given. Now, not everyone follows this book, which is sort of a rule book for making diagnoses.
Sounds like Beth of a Salesman has one trait of the narcissistic personality disorder. A little thin skin never hurt anyone.
And there are flaws in this book, but it is the agreed upon way to do it. And until the next edition comes out, it's the accepted standard for making diagnoses and for recognizing these patterns.
What are the diagnostic criteria that you're aware
A to B throwing in a little knick-knack paddywhack, give your dog a bone into the chat. Love that.
of that a psychiatrist would look at determining whether or not somebody has a narcissistic personality disorder?
The criteria that DSM-3,
Good question, Mandy.
revised 1987 edition, give for the disorder are first, that an individual reacts to criticism with feelings of rage, shame, or humiliation. This is the thin-skinned issue that I mentioned, that when criticized or rejected or not given enough praise even, such individuals can become furious. They can feel terribly ashamed and be devastated in that way. They respond
Thanks for popping in,
strongly
Cowboy.
and emotionally.
Glad to have you here. Looking forward till after the Betty Broderick Marathon's done and we get a chance to do some work together in May. I'll see you soon. Happy studying.
To anything that they see as criticism or rejection. The second is that they are interpersonally exploitive. Actually, it says exploitative. And that means that
Good for him for calling that out, too. It's one of those words, kind of like a Sarahism, like a fruition, where you're like, it sounds like it could be right, but...
in their dealings with other people, they use people to meet their own needs. The third is that they have a grandiose sense of self-importance, which is what I referred to as the swelled ego in common parlance. The fourth is that they
Thank you,
believe
Elizabeth.
that their problems are unique and can only be understood by other special people.
Who does that sound like? You don't know. Oh, you don't know the things I could tell you. Only you're too stupid to understand, so I'll just tell you my tale of woe, like the boy who cried, whoa.
So that they think that because they're so special, regardless of whether they really are people of achievement, they think they should be treated that way, regardless of whether they're particularly kind or good or decent people.
This is where I think Betty and Sarah are kind of interesting, because Betty has a lot of things where you could see, why she would be, why she would have this delusion of grandeur. Like, she was born into a good family, always had good things, like just used to being better than others, as opposed to Sarah, who's so decidedly below average. I think that's what attracts me towards Sarah coverage, is to see somebody that's so beyond mediocre, like just, not special at all, to think they're so special. You think you're so special.
They still expect to be seen as special and treated that way, not to have to wait in line, not to have to do
I'm special, 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 special. I'm in need of your attention.
what other
Give
people
it to
have
me. Du, 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 du.
Fifth characteristic is that they are preoccupied with fantasies of unlimited success or power or brilliance or beauty or ideal love, meaning that they often spend their time thinking about what they want, how it should be, how it will someday be. The sixth is described as a sense of entitlement or the unreasonable expectation of especially favorable treatment.
To any new moderators, just so you know, this is probably the best chat to be a mod in, because I don't really expect anything beyond, keeping out people who are out of sorts, and then you can kind of work as a team to do that. So there's no banned words. People can mess with me if it's a fun discussion. I don't mind engaging in a little verbal fisticuffs, as it were. If somebody gets out of sorts, then we'll put them in timeout, kind of like a hockey penalty. Give them a 5 or 10 minute misconduct, but hopefully after they've had a chance to sit in the box and think about what they've done, they'll come back and be a little bit more engaging in the chat. But it shouldn't happen. I think I've only had one person get timed out. And yeah, so as a mod, just put your feet up. If I've elevated you to mod, it's just because I've seen you in the chat. You've been bringing information that's useful to others, and I wouldn't want you to get missed by somebody who's not on all messages, which is a good reminder to be on all messages so you don't miss people who might not be getting highlight because they're not a member or moderator. So that's that. Also, less pinned comments right now because most people are getting their pins to the bottom. So if you want to dismiss the bottom pin, you've got 5 to 6 minutes before I'll pin anything else. So you don't have to constantly be keeping up with that. We'll get back to Mr. Park Dietz.
There again, the notion is the world owes me respect or a living or money or fame or whatever the person's desires are. They think it should be handed to them rather than earned. They feel entitled to it. And the 7th is requiring constant attention and admiration, feeling badly if they're not being admired or attended to. The 8th is lacking empathy, which I've already described. And the 9th feature is being preoccupied with feelings of envy.
To tell the truth, what's the most effective thing to do as a moderator in my chats is just welcome anyone that you see that's new to the chat. Sometimes, I might just miss it because of what I'm doing. So every welcome to somebody that's, got a gray name that comes into the chat makes it that much easier for me to see, oh, there's somebody new here, and I can give them a personal welcome through the stream. So if nothing else, if you want, an idea of what to do as a moderator, just be welcoming to others.
So that they're often thinking of how much more somebody else has than they have. Now, those 9 features are all 9 of the characteristics that may occur in people who have this disorder.
Well, I got so distracted by the first 3 being on, I didn't even really pay attention to the next 6. I'm going to have to rewatch this episode. First 3 were so on, though, I can't, and everything he said after sounded Sarah. And yeah, it blows my mind that 2 people as different as Sarah and Betty could have the exact same, personality disorder. Like, why try and invent a new word for it? Vastly different upbringings, vastly different skill sets, and base level of ability and exceptionalism, and yet eerily similar in their belief in their specialness.
But we only give the diagnosis or classify people as having a narcissistic personality disorder if they have 5 out of those 9. If they have 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 or 9, that's enough to give the label. It's not required that all 9 be present.
Doctor, in your review of all this case material here in front of us, did you find facts to support a finding as to each of these diagnostic criteria regarding the defendant?
Yes, in this case, I found evidence to support all 9 of the 9.
Just approximately how many supporting facts did you find?
Too many to count.
Okay. Could you give it?
Too many to count? No, come on. I guess the guy's a psychiatrist, not a mathematician, but I imagine you'd still be able to count the number of indicators, 3 digits tops.
Some of the facts that you pulled from the case materials that show the defendant has a narcissistic personality disorder.
Well, with respect to the first criterion I mentioned of reacting to criticism overly strongly, one example is that in her book manuscript, Mrs. Broderick talks about a period when she first suspected that Dan was having an affair, and she wrote, "My great friends were with me all the way. They saw the drastic change in my personality. My health was suffering. I was a shaking, crying, nervous wreck."
Okay, this is the first. So he's addressing the evidence that Betty's trying to put forward that Dan did this to her, and she wasn't like this already. We'll go back about just a half tick here.
Mrs. Broderick talks about a period when she first suspected that Dan was having an affair. And she wrote, "My great friends were with me all the way. They saw the drastic change in my personality. My health was suffering. I was a shaking, crying, nervous wreck." Now, that's an indication that even at the beginning, when she suspected there was an affair, she responded dramatically and emotionally with a profound sense that she was physically a wreck and psychologically a wreck, that it began even with those suspicions. And of course, losing one's husband in an affair or feeling that that's happening is perceived as an important sense of rejection. So that's quite a criticism for someone who's narcissistic to begin with, to think that their husband's cheating.
Did you see any other factors?
It's a double-edged sword, because it's not only the infidelity and the loss of trust, but it's a personal, you're not as good as the person I'm cheating with, which for a narcissist is another huge injury. God, this guy is sharp. Like, for 40 minutes in, he's already kind of eye-opened me a few times. And this is relatively the beginning of his career as an expert witness. You can see why everyone was so excited to hear him testify.
That you'd like to tell us about?
In supporting the same example, there are other things in her.
It's a good point, too. Carolina Hurtado says, "In my opinion, in one way or another, we all have narcissistic traits. The difference is, those of us who know about narcissism control it and don't use it to hurt others." I've referenced, like, as a teenager, and I think a lot of teenagers are narcissistic, not as a disorder, but just as a function of not having an understanding of the world. When you're born, immediately everything is through your point of view, right? So until you get enough life experience of, understanding others' experiences, it's fairly normal just to have that narrow view of life through your own eyes. Why was I going to go? Oh yeah, because when there was a few things with me as a teenager where I, thought I was smarter than anyone. If anyone was doing better than me, it was because I wasn't applying myself. That kind of took until, I got out into a wider circle and realized I'm not the smartest one in the world. The internet helped for that. I think I played chess online after thinking I was a really good chess player, and it turned out I was really good at playing chess against the 6 people in my neighborhood as a kid. But once I went onto the internet, I'm not very good at chess. Where was I going to go with that? Oh, just the point that Carolina was making is that, we all have those tendencies, but yeah, a lot of us realize, oh shit, that's kind of a fault in me. And then others, I guess, don't ever realize that and just continue going through life feeling just as exceptional as they felt as a 13 to 15-year-old, which that scares me. Like, if I had to live my life in this body with the confidence, the misplaced confidence I had myself as a teenager, I would be so hurt, like, just from throwing myself into dangerous situations.
In her writings, where she shows herself to be becoming enraged when she's criticized. But the most dramatic examples are of a kind that rise to the level one might call narcissistic rage. This is a familiar phenomenon to mental health professionals of what happens when someone who's narcissistic is insulted or rejected. Examples from her past include throwing things at Dan, locking him out of the house, criticizing him in front of other people. Those are all ways she would respond when her pride was wounded. Grabbing people by the arm and digging in her fingernails, kicking.
That's a Sarah. I told her if she grabs my arm one more time, I'm going to have her arrested. I think that was the property manager Sarah was begging. You got to talk to her. She'll speak for me.
Kim and Lee out of the house. These are rageful acts, as are the obscene phone calls, burning the clothes, the vandalism at Coral Reef, bashing her truck into Dan's front door at Cypress, lighting the fire on the carpet at Coral Reef, the repeated homicidal threats. All of these reflect the narcissistic rage of one who perceives a severe criticism of her. And this went on for years.
Are narcissists always angry?
Not 100% of the time, even when they are being
Same guys.
at their most rageful. And not all narcissists get angry at all.
When they do get angry, do they get more angry than other people?
It can be severe anger. What's more likely to happen is that it will last longer and that the anger will be disproportionate to what originally provoked it.
When you say it would be disproportionate to what originally provoked it, can you kind of elaborate on that, please?
Well, sure. Given the same insult, let's say someone's clothing is insulted by someone whose opinion one values, the normal response is not to feel very good about that for the rest of the day, perhaps.
Nope,
for the
state
rest of the
rebuttal.
party, and to wonder why they
A
made
to
such
B.
a cutting comment. But somebody who's narcissistic may never forgive that comment, may never want to talk to that person.
But A to B asks, is he testifying for the defense? And no, he's a state rebuttal witness. But already he seems like a true expert witness. I think the defense is going to get very forthcoming, honest answers out of him too that may or may not help Betty. But he's just so knowledgeable in his field that he's a true expert witness, not a hired gun as much. And I think the fact that the state hired him shows their confidence in the fact that that Betty is guilty rather than needing to have, I don't know, like a Julie Harper type testify. Anyway, we'll watch more.
And again, we'll write them off as a friend.
But he has testified for defendants as well. Like, I think you might be thinking about the Menendez trial. And I haven't seen his testimony in that, but I know that somebody in the chat mentioned that he testified for the defendants in that case. So,
Out of proportion. The anger is more intense and the reaction is more intense.
You said something that they would hold on to that anger for some time. Could you explain that?
Depending on the nature of the event to which they're responding, an individual can bear narcissistic rage indefinitely. People can cut off members of their family because they've been offended by them, can never go back to employment where they were once humiliated, can do rather drastic things because of the intolerability of owning up to the rejection or the criticism or the shame of it all as they feel it.
Going back to the remaining diagnostic criteria that you talked about, did you see other facts in the defendant's case file materials that you reviewed that support a finding that she was a narcissistic personality disorder?
The second heading is being interpersonally exploitive. Some examples of that are the way in which Mrs. Broderick manipulated the children in her quest for vengeance, the way she would drop them off at their father's, making them feel that they were being punished. Statements that she made, such as, if I'm not going to be Mrs. Daniel T. Broderick, he can take care of the kids. Or a statement such as, see what woman wants him with 4 kids. Those are indicative of using the children as pawns for what she thought was a higher purpose of revenge. Or, and by the way, those things also illustrate the lack of empathy. That is, that instead of thinking about how this will affect the children, how it will make them feel, the more important thing to her is gaining revenge against Dan. That's corroborated by the tapes, by the statements the children made to therapists, by the testimony of the daughters even before the homicides. And the tapes show this repeatedly.
Is there any one particular tape conversation that comes to mind when you think about the tapes?
Well, one is the conversation between Mrs. Broderick and her son, Rhett, where she says, Rhett, I hate to tell you this, but you got to learn to stick up for yourself and you got to speak up to Daddy. I'm quoting her. She said, Daddy and the cunt. He's killing you all. He's ruining your lives and killing you, and you've got to speak up and fight back. And Rhett said, I'm not dead. Mrs. Broderick then said, yeah, well, maybe you're not dead physically, but emotionally you're dead. You don't have anyone that loves you or cares about you over there, and he mistreats you. Treats you like a little piece of shit. And he's a cold-hearted bastard fucking an office cunt. What kind of a parent is that? Rhett replied, a cold one. Mrs. Broderick said, "Bad one, very, 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 very bad one. And you shouldn't put up with it anymore. You should tell him to fuck off. You and Lily and Danny should say, 'Fuck off, asshole,' and come over here. Tell him to drop dead and go away. And then you'd be happy over here, right?"
I like that
Well,
they're not censoring
that
his
conversation
testimony.
and others like it illustrate many points about Mrs. Broderick's personality, but one of them is the interpersonal exploitiveness of using the children to gain revenge. Another one is the lack of empathy that it shows.
Kind of funny, like the matter-of-fact way he used swear words, I think it's kind of the same way I use it in my streams. I rarely use it to just for sensational, like usually it's, well, sometimes I do, never mind, I'm not as good as him. But what was my point? Never mind about swearing. No, I'm going to say it. Because they've been bleeping out some people, but no, I've lost it. If I have a comment about swearing later, you'll know it was this one here that I'm talking about.
Another is a kind of exaggeration that I'll discuss when I mention the histrionic features, where she talks about very, very, very. Whenever people use phrases like very, 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 you got a clue that they might be about to exaggerate.
Do we know anyone who says very, very, very?
What about the grandiose sense of self-importance that you mentioned as one
Very much so.
of the diagnostic criteria? Did you see any facts in the case file that reflected that in the defendant?
Yes. One example was telling Kim that when she divorced Dan, she was going to marry the Prince of Saudi Arabia next because he'd fire it.
Okay, I remember the swearing story. He has a little lack of awareness of social situations, this doctor, in his speech or interview that I heard him give, or I was listening to last night. He was talking about how one of his early miscues was giving a speech in front of what he thought was professional psychiatrists. And he was talking about the psychiatry of sadistic killers. And he had slides that included, gruesome depictions of the actual scenes from crime scenes of sadistic killers. And part of this was to, let the psychiatrists know what was really going on in the mind of lunatics. What he didn't realize is most of them had their wives there, and it was a dinner, and the setting wasn't appropriate to it, and he kind of like bowed his head a little bit recounting that story. And but it shows that he's just an information guy. He's not caught up. You could tell he didn't make a "can I curse?" Like, he just said the swear words as matter of fact. And that's, I get that impression from him. He's probably been a steady Eddie. Like the guy we're seeing here is so much like the guy I saw 35 years later in a retrospective video, that I imagine he's very self-assured because of his knowledge and ability, and it gives him the confidence to just be himself and learn later. Oh, that was socially unacceptable. Okay, I've learned on that.
Everything she wanted. I see it as grandiose to have said that the guy asked me to marry him every day for 3 years, or to say I finally married him, meaning Dan, out of pity. He wanted me so bad. Those are all grandiose sorts of statements. Yet another is from Mrs. Broderick's book manuscript written in February of '88, where she wrote, "Let me tell you about my optimism."
And that's another important thing. God, I was watching it was a Netflix thing, I think Worst Ex Ever or something like that. But it bears to say that one of the most dangerous times to leave an abuse, one of the most times in a relationship with an abusive spouse is leaving the abusive spouse. So, don't just, if you're making the important choice or know someone who is, make sure they're getting it with all the support they can. You don't want to just, I'm out, my stuff's gone, I'll hope for the best, and then he comes to your best friend's house or something like that. Get the authorities involved in the shitty situation, but don't ever, like, I don't want to be a bother, so I'm not. If you're in authentic fear, then let the people know that can hopefully help you, but realize that That's a real. It's going to be as scary as ever during the attempt to leave.
I am a very up and forgiving, friendly person. I try not to dwell on disappointment or unhappiness and try to make the best of things and go on. This trait of mine is very valuable to others. It is very uplifting and encouraging and happy. I am a great wife and mother, teacher and friend because of it. I am always positive and happy. Now, that's a grandiose statement about her. That is, it inflates, at least to some extent, the value and worth and extent of these traits. And besides that, of course, it's inconsistent with the claim that she was suicidal when she wrote that. Another example was Mrs. Broderick frequently stating to other people that she had a gun and was going to kill Dan and Linda, and rationalizing that when she did so, she wouldn't get in any trouble for it because the world would thank her for it. And in fact, even said that a jury would let her off. That view that the world would thank her for the homicides.
It's almost like Sarah's view that the world cares about her. There's a chunk of the world, we're interested in the case, but she really thinks it's like a worldwide kind of phenomenon, and people are drawn to me. You don't understand.
She'd be let off as a grandiose view that because she's so important, she's so special, she wouldn't be accountable.
That's a moderator level
What about
comment,
this diagnostic
Elizabeth.
criteria? Did you find anything under that reflected in the case files that shows the defendant was a narcissistic personality disorder?
Yes, the fourth characteristic is that of believing one's problems are unique and can only be understood by other special people. In her diary, she shows that she believes no one else understands how much she goes through. Also, in a letter that she drafted to Judge Joseph, there's a statement in which she indicated that she thought that homicide would be justifiable if she didn't get her own way. And then she crossed out that statement. That, too, shows her sense of having special problems. She wrote, if he is trying to build a case for justifiable homicide, he is doing a great job.
What about under the next diagnostic criteria?
The fifth is the preoccupation with fantasies of unlimited success, power, brilliance, beauty, or ideal love. And with respect to that criterion, one example is a passage in her diary where she refers to hers as, quote, one of the world's nicest families, end quote. Again, putting the notion that it is not just good or fine or promising or special, but one of the best in the world. That's what makes it a sign of this disorder. The sixth criterion is having a sense of entitlement, the expectation that others will treat one specially. And here, again, there are many examples. One of the most telling is from December of 1987, where at Christmas, Mrs. Broderick wrote in her diary a list of the things that she felt entitled to, but of which she thought she was being deprived. She wrote,
A list?
My lifestyle has been trashed.
Sarah made a lot of lists too. That's an underviewed one, but I know it exists in her records. The court had her notes app, and I think it was SKR that did the reading from it. But the notes app on your phone, she was pre-litigating arguments in the notes app. So basically having a conversation with pretend George in her notes so that she could give real George shit, but have her arguments set up. Like this, she was her own chat GPT. She was like, chat SB, I don't know, SBB, Sarah Boone bitch. But yeah, I would love to just read the notes because I know it's been reported on, but I don't feel like there's been a full just reading of the notes. I'm going to have to look into that more. But I definitely know that I think it was SKR that did the reading of it. Might have been part of that 15-hour stream or like the super, super long one. In any case, yeah, let's go back a couple of seconds there, 12 seconds back.
Mrs. Broderick wrote in her diary a list of the things that she felt entitled to, but of which she thought she was being deprived. She wrote, "My lifestyle has been trashed. No tree, no one to help carry it in, load the car, etc. No one to see it, no party, no kids, no attic, no coffee table, no country club memberships, no boat for parade of lights, no Jag, only truck, no escort, no parties, no gowns, no presents by or for me, no ski party, no ski trip, no large party, no money." Now, that passage is one of a number that show something of Mrs. Broderick's priorities. And I think it's relevant to point out that that was the same Christmas that she had the opportunity to have the children, but wouldn't take them because Dan wouldn't give her $6,000 for a ski trip. At the same time,
Sure.
Huh.
Take our noon recess at this time, but before we do, I should have mentioned this to you earlier, Mr. Schmidt. If you want to move over to the more comfortable chair after the noon recess, that's fine. It's up to you.
Mr. Schmidt is another, so that's the second juror that's been identified by name.
That one swivels, the one you're in doesn't, so it may be more comfortable for you. Please remember the admonition, ladies and gentlemen, not to discuss the case among yourselves, nor allow anyone else to discuss it with you, nor form any opinions till it's finally submitted to you. See you at 1:30. You proceed, Mr. Burkhoff.
Thank you, Your Honor.
GS Dog's mom says, will you be covering her parole hearings? I have found two short clips, very short, like 2 to 3 minutes long, like even short enough that maybe that's how we could end the stream today. One is her telling her story and the parole, I think it was the 2017 parole, and the parole adjudicator telling her, look, you've shown no remorse up to this day. You're in here still trying to litigate the facts of the case. You weren't surprised. You went to the house. And then it's followed by really emotional testimony from the children, two of whom were testifying on her behalf, two against. So that might be a thoughtful way to end the stream. And we're coming back with more Park Dietz testimony in tomorrow's stream that will start 22 hours and 45 minutes from now.
Dr. Dietz, I think we were, when we adjourned before lunchtime, on the 7th criteria, diagnostic criteria
SKR standalone.
for narcissistic disorder. And that talks about.
But yeah, if anyone knows the links to longer videos of her parole hearings, even if it's, like a website link, let me know, post it on the community tab, or even post a link in the comments here.
Requiring constant attention and admiration. Did you find any facts as to that in your review of the case file?
yes.
No, SKR doesn't have an episode about her hearings. SKR has the episode about Sarah's Notes app, or at least I don't think it's a whole episode of it, but yeah, now I'm saying it like it's for sure. If anyone did it, it's probably him, but somebody was reading out her Notes app, and in the Notes app, it was pre-litigated arguments about, found your Plenty of Fish account, and, who's Brenda. It had the names of some of the people that the prosecution... That's how I know it exists, because the prosecution started their cross with that, I call it the Mambo number 5 opening. Like, so, do you know who Erica is? No. Wasn't there a little bit of Erica in George's life? A little bit of Monica on the side? A little bit of Tina in between? Know what I mean? No, I don't know who those people are. And then it turned out that in the Notes app, she knew exactly who they were, because she had these crazy revenge fantasies or imagined pretend George style arguments, basically setting herself up to ambush him. So when George says, "You overwhelm me," I think that's a perfect example of how Sarah built up her ammunition to overwhelm him. She'd just be sitting there while he's working at Ace Hardware for the day, typing up arguments to have with him the minute he walked in the door.
Please tell us about that.
Well, for example, in the marriage encounter book that was written in November of 1976, there are 3 of the statements Mrs. Broderick wrote that I think are examples of that. One is her statement, quote, "I feel like no one admires me, and I need that," end quote. That is the need for admirations. understood and expressed.
Okay, if SKR's done it, then I won't do a straight read, but I should maybe go back at that and find clips of it and do an analysis of the Notes app read, maybe versus Betty's notes, and come up with a video that way. Thank you for the help on sourcing that.
A second is, she wrote, "The number one thing I loved about you was how much you loved me." And then she added, "and showed it." The
Politically incorrect. I was there at Caricatures. That's where I watched the trial. We might have been in some of the same chats. I was just Dan D back then.
point there is that what she loved most about Dan was how much he loved her. It's the reflected glory that she received from Dan that she found particularly attractive about him. And thirdly, she was answering a question as to the 5 things that she liked best about Dan and herself. And what one of the 5 things she listed was, people seem to envy us. And that again reflects the desire, the need for being admired and receiving attention from others. A later example is the way Mrs. Broderick described her feelings of being exploited by her own children when they didn't give her enough presence or enough attention. She wrote in a diary entry dated January 3rd, 1988, quote, "I'm very sick of my kids always taking advantage of."
So it's a 1-hour standalone of him just reading the Notes app. Thank you, Kitten Pusher. So that, I wonder if you can even, if anyone, Kitten Pusher, if you've got it in your history, do you know how to post a link into the chat? You would do it like you're sharing it. You click the share button on the video, and then that should copy a link into your clipboard that you can, I think, just hold your finger on the phone and it'll give you a paste option. If you can do it, and then I'll pin that link for the next little bit for anyone who wants to put that in their histories. I can also look for it if you can't find it or can't do it.
My sweetness and generosity and getting nothing in return. No Christmas presents, no visits unless they want money, no love, end quote.
What about the 8th criteria, lack of empathy?
Yes, there's a great deal of evidence to support that as well.
Do you have any particular factual instances you'd like to tell us about?
Yes, among them are the nonchalance that Mrs. Broderick conveyed about the effects of dumping her children at their father's door. That is, her lack of concern about the effect that would have on them. With that, as with the obscene messages, she simply wouldn't. She refused to be influenced by the opinions of others. People had told her, and repeatedly, that this was not good for the kids, but that didn't prevent her from doing this. She seemed to be oblivious to the effects that this would have on them, even after she was warned about it. In one of the conversations recorded with Danny, for example, she says, "I'm too embarrassed to even tell anybody I know you guys," which is the kind of thing that she was capable of understanding would be harmful to a child, and that she'd been told not to do things like that. She's an intelligent woman who has better sense than that. She even acknowledged having read many books on divorce, and of course they talk about the effects on the children of this kind of behavior, but it was more important to her to hurt Dan and Linda than to prevent the possible harms to the children. Another example is from a statement that Mrs. Broderick made to Dr. Nelson in February of '87 about Rhett. Dr. Nelson quoted her as saying, "I don't want to care for him. If I do 10 more years of childcare and not take care of myself, I'll end up with nothing. Rhett will have to go back to Dan and do the best he can. I have to take care of myself." That, like the other examples, reflects her priorities and indicates that she's not as sensitive to the needs of
I found
other
it, Kitten
people
Pusher. I'll
as to
post
her
the link.
own, and that's what's described as a lack of empathy.
And Dr., the last criteria for narcissism, the preoccupation with feelings of envy, did you find any facts in the case file to support those?
Yes.
That diagnostic criteria. Please tell us about that.
Well, again, so some examples out of many are Mrs. Broderick's children saying that if they did anything with their father and Linda, their mother would be furious, calling them traitors and worse. But then later,
I've added
wants
you
to
as a
know
mod
every
now
detail
too, Kitten
about what
Pusher.
had gone on in Dan and Linda's life. And that's also confirmed by many of her friends and by Dan's housekeepers, that she wants to know what they're doing. Likewise, in a taped message, Mrs. Broderick revealed something of the connection between her preoccupation with feelings of envy and her desire for revenge when she said, and I quote, "I close my eyes and I see you in the cunt, and I see you doing all your wonderful things, and you're going to be so sorry," end quote. That's reflective of her preoccupation, that she would fantasize repeatedly about such a thing, and that preoccupation with it, thinking about them together, was associated with her feelings of revenge as she threatens they'll be sorry. Yet another example is that what occurred at the attempted mediation with Dr. Ruth Roth, it was clear from that Mrs. Broderick was so envious of Linda that it was more important to her to obtain revenge than to be able to keep the children. Dr. Roth quoted her as saying, quote, "I'm not going to be the single mother of 4 kids. I've already told you that. He will die first. I'm not letting go of him that easy. The little was mine and he will stay mine," end quote. That reflects envy.
Now, taking the general population as a whole, is the narcissistic personality disorder that uncommon?
No, there are not accurate data on what proportion of the population suffers it, but we know it's common. You can find it in the floor of the Senate, in any legislative hallway, in any TV newsroom, in any dugout for a major league team. Narcissism is an attribute among many people, including those who are successful, who enjoy the limelight and are prideful about it and see themselves as special and more important than other people. So it's something we all run across this in our everyday lives too, when we find people who expect special favors, who don't expect to have to do things the ordinary way. They expect shortcuts and special attention. It's not a rare condition. Most of the time we don't even notice it because it's so prevalent and such an important facet of everyday life that we don't even recognize it as abnormal most of the time we're with people who are narcissistic.
Okay. Let's shift gears for a second, go to another area. What is a histrionic personality, Doctor?
Oh, that'll be fun.
Histrionic personality.
That's more Betty than
refers
Sarah,
to,
I think, and Sarah's pretty
in the
histrionic
lesser
too.
form traits, or in the more troublesome form, a disorder in which individuals are primarily characterized, and again, this is from DSM-3R, which tries to give the essential features of each condition. A pervasive pattern of being too emotional, that is, in the technical words, excessive emotionality, and being attention-seeking, which means what it sounds like, people who try to get attention. So those are the 2 essential ingredients. Now, as with the
found it.
narcissistic
Thank you.
personality disorder, there are a number of different characteristics listed, 8 specifically.
I don't like your
And
demeanor, Mr.
Before
Dietz.
someone's given the diagnosis of having the histrionic personality disorder, one must find that they have at least 5 of the 8 characteristics that are listed. And moreover, before it's called a disorder, it either has to trouble them that they have these needs and wants and behaviors, or else it has to interfere with how they get along with other people.
What are the 8 diagnostic criteria that you just talked about?
Actually, I don't have all 8 of them at hand. I only have at hand the ones that I thought there was evidence for in
How
this
many?
case.
How many are those?
5.
Why don't we go with those?
Those 5 are: expresses emotion with inappropriate exaggeration, for example, having temper tantrums. And this refers to the tendency to overreact to things, to show too much emotion in response to whatever the events really call for, and to be constantly making things out to be more than they are. That is, this constant tendency to exaggerate, usually in some emotional direction, and often, as it turns out, for the purpose of having a particular impact on the audience.
Doctor, did you note any particular facts in your review of all the case material here that supported a finding under criteria 4?
Oh, yes.
Please tell us about that.
Well, some examples are statements that Mrs. Broderick has made that are emotional statements in which, for emotional reasons, something is inappropriately exaggerated, such as her statement, I was turned out into the street penniless by my husband. Or her statement,
Right.
Dan Broderick kidnapped my children and held them hostage for 4 years. Or I was getting bludgeoned. In fact, I considered it a gang rape by what was going on. That referred to the press and the public not being allowed in the courtroom during the dissolution proceedings. Or another one was her statement, I really don't know what you mean as a narcissistic marriage. This is in response to a letter she'd received. If this is a story at all, it's a story of total corruption of the local legal system. I was gang raped by the Bar Association for 5 years. Half of them helped their friend Dan Broderick break the laws to destroy me. The other half turned their backs on me and wouldn't help me get any legal representation. Or her statement, I was terminated as a mother, from her testimony in this trial. Or her,
My parental rights have been terminated. It's not fair. Yeah, sounds familiar.
statement that she'd received a threatening letter from Dan, when the letter, which still exists, actually shows that he was saying that if she didn't let him know what furniture she wanted, he would sell it. Now, each of those is an exaggeration from the actual meaning of events, sometimes using very colorful metaphors, which of course attract a lot of attention, but it's not an accurate historical account of what happened with bludgeoning and gang rape and kidnapping and so on.
Fairly
Well,
loaded
diagnostic
language.
criteria, the defendant is uncomfortable in situations in which he or she is not, well, that a narcissistic person is, strike that histrionic person is uncomfortable in situations in which he or she is not the center of attention. Did you find any indicia of that in your review of the case file?
Yes, that's the second histrionic feature that I think is supported amply by the evidence. Here the point is this need for attention and being the center of attention. And in that way, it's like the narcissistic trait of needing attention and admiration. It's phrased a little differently. And here it's phrased.
A to B is hitting on one of the similarities here. This is so similar to Sarah, A to B writes. Every time she called the cops on George, her complaint was always that he called her names. She sees words as actual attacks. And if she doesn't see them as actual attacks, there's absolutely no difference in how she describes the incident to others. And by the time she's told that story 2-3 times, she's just as convinced that it was an actual attack. This is what it feels like when you cheat on me. Well, that's your definition of cheating, right? Just on his phone. Loved how Chelsea threw that into. Yeah, your definition of cheating. Poor George, just talking to people on the phone, and he's like, still, he shouldn't do that either. But, you hook up with players, you go to Muldoon's, you hook up with ladies' men, you got to expect that he's going to have one or two side things that he's, just looking for options, especially when he's got all that crazy to deal with at home.
That the person's uncomfortable if they're not the center of attention. But it's not so different. An example of this is provided in something that Mrs. Broderick wrote that shows how part of her gratification in the marriage came from the attention that came to her as a result of being Mrs. Daniel Broderick, and the ability that being married to him gave her to have lavish and extravagant parties. She wrote, in 1983, we were on top of the world. Our home was almost completely decorated by me, and I was so proud of how it looked. We had money for maids, cars, trips, clothes, etc. We not only attended charity affairs, but we were able to host full tables and invite our friends.
We were living in a material world, and I was a material girl.
Well, that reflects her sense of loss, as she wistfully recalls this, of having been the center of attention, because it's uncomfortable to her not to be able to be in that position. And also, many of Mrs. Broderick's friends noted that what upset her after the divorce wasn't the emotional loss of Dan as a person, but really the loss of social status, because she had had quite high status in that marriage. Still another example
Dorgan,
comes from
good
a
to see ya.
description of a party that Mrs. Broderick went to. This is written after the separation, about December 5th of 1987, the Learn Aloud party. She wrote, besides being fat and having no money to bid in the auction, I am so brokenhearted. I have no personality when talking to people. I have nothing fun and positive to talk about, like new furs and jewels, trips, home remodels, kids, etc. Again, mourning the loss of being the center of attention and of being able to play that role that she enjoyed, which gratified her.
Dr. Dietz, what about the next
I'm going to go out on a limb and say Betty's not enjoying this testimony so far.
criteria, which has to do with displaying rapidly shifting
Oh, that's her jail bracelet. All this time I thought she was like an early supporter of Lance Armstrong.
and shallow expressions of emotion? Did you note any facts in the case file to support that criteria?
Yes, there's quite a bit to indicate that Mrs. Broderick's emotions quickly.
What is more yellow, Sarah's? Betty's hair or Betty's wristband? I guess the hair is more bleached than yellow, so I'm going to go with the wristband. Never mind, answered my own question.
Move from one to the next. She can shift between moods rapidly and
She's
shift
trying
back
not to.
just as rapidly. The diaries have many entries about times that
Face
she
is
was
getting red.
upset for a day or two, or depressed for a day or two, or worried for a day or
You can see a little anger in the face, like it's almost red and flushed the same way as Shannon Burgess in the Karen Reed trial, when his qualifications suddenly started getting read out on the stand and he realized, like, oh no, it's all coming out. Either that or there's a different lens on the camera. Sometimes the filters are different coming in.
two, or angry over and over and over, and not usually just for a day or two with anger. Toward the children, she even shows these kinds of shifts between loving the children and being very proud of them. And
Thank you,
pleased with them,
Carolina.
to, for some quite temporary reason, being furious with them.
And just to toot my own horn, SKR was outed as a secret subscriber of Dan D True Crime. Somebody gifted some gift memberships about a month ago. Maybe he's still a member. In any case, Short King Reacts was one of the benefactors of a free Dan D True Crime membership. So it was kind of cool to see that he's keeping an eye.
Wanting to disown them, being hostile or condemning them and calling them names. And you can even hear this even in the course of a single conversation, where she goes from sounding the loving mother to sounding very angry with the child or willing to use the child, and back to being more motherly. The shifts happen quickly, and they don't stay in place for long, nor do they reflect any central change in how she sees people. It's just this constant fluttering of emotion.
That's another good idea. I could stay with this Taylor Swift theme because I've done Bad Blood for Betty, but I could do Shake It Off and alternate between Sarah's shaking and Betty's shaking off the constructive criticism they don't appreciate. That's Brad in the front row. That is boyfriend Brad. Boyfriend, not my... Can I zoom it? Okay, and then... Yeah, I think that's working for you, right? Yeah, that's boyfriend Brad. Boyfriend Brad also played Hermie the Drill in the Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer classic with the felt animation. Brad Wright, just a friend, sitting in the front row of the courtroom there.
Another example is the way she
Cameraman. Wow, what an anticipation. The cameraman saw the same thing. It's like, oh, let's just zoom in on him.
she's disowned long-term friends or family members, or at least temporarily said she'd done so, because they wouldn't side with her in her hatred toward Dan and Linda.
What about the next criteria, having to do with actions being directed towards obtaining immediate satisfaction?
Is one of those Lee? I think the dark-haired girl might be Lee. Lee, I don't want to be on camera, Broderick.
And having no tolerance and a frustration for delayed gratification.
Well, that's the technical language DSM-3R uses. It's referred to as being self-centered in the list of criteria. It's something that's more familiar to people as the way children behave, where they want what they want, when they want it. They want it right now. They have to have their needs met immediately. Mrs. Broderick even wrote in 1976 a statement.
Kitten Pusher mentions enjoying this vintage trial, and if I want to do more, we could take it at a slower pace. I 100% agree. I think marathons are going to be at best a once a year thing, maybe twice a year. You know, if there's a current trial that if Afro Man goes, that won't go this long though. Yeah. I've learned from this. I don't think I want to do month-long marathons as a regular feature of the channel, but I love the idea of reviewing older trials where all of the footage is available, and maybe it's something we can take one that is over the course of 10 videos and do it on a series of weekends, and have 6 parts that way. Especially if it's something where, you're not worried about knowing what the outcome's going to be. So there's no spoilers. You can watch ahead if you like. And yeah, I think a slower pace might make more sense for some of the future rewatches we try and do.
Right along those lines. This is in her marriage encounter book where she wrote, "I hate to have people tell me to do things. I like to do what I feel like when I feel like.
I do what I want. When I want."
And as to the last criteria, having a style of speech that's excessively impressionistic and lacking in detail, did you find any facts to support that criteria?
Yes, I've already given some examples of how her speech is vague and does not focus on the details of things. She paints with a broad and colorful brush designed to achieve an effect.
Not weird at all, Larissa.
And without much concern for the details of what's being said or the historical truth of what's being said. So she will sometimes speak out of emotion about how she felt without concern for the fact that the words she used aren't about what really happened. They're about how she felt. I gave you some examples before of these sorts of colorful word pictures, talking about herself as homeless or penniless, or the kids having been held hostage, or Dan having kidnapped them, or being gang raped. Now, these do attract attention, which fulfills both her narcissistic needs and also her histrionic needs to be at the center of attention. But they don't accurately describe what happened. Even when histrionics are exaggerating, however, they know the truth. They know what the truth is. And if they're pushed on it, if they're confronted, then they will back down and they will readily acknowledge that I wasn't actually homeless or I wasn't exactly penniless, but I felt that way.
Why do histrionics use exaggeration?
Well, there are a couple of reasons. One is because they do tend to be responding emotionally, and the emotional pitch is more important to them than whether it's what a witness would have seen or what was objectively the case. But it's also because this helps keep them in the limelight, helps keep things exciting, makes things interesting, captures the attention of other people, keeps other people on the edge of their seats, or makes things more entertaining for them. And it's because of behaviors like this that histrionic characteristics are quite valued by people who are in the performing arts.
Just going to clarify a question in chat. Politically Incorrect asks, is the paramour testifying? We saw others watching the trial before testifying. Brad Wright was one of the first witnesses. He was a state witness, testified as Betty's boyfriend. And then several days later when Betty was testifying and Betty saw him testify, she said, no, he's just a friend. He's just a dear, dear friend. You don't understand. You all don't understand. You're all trying to assume. You don't know me.
Arts, and that one finds so much of it in Hollywood. That tendency to be colorful and flamboyant and emotional.
As far as I can tell, Dr. Dietz may be the last witness. It's possible there's a short witness at the end, but I know the Dietz testimony extends beyond what we're going to watch today. It's going to be how we start tomorrow, and then it goes into the closing argument. So if there is a witness, it's just one of those little short witnesses that's going to... I can't imagine that there is one. I think he's the final. I think this is how the state wants to finish.
Has a market in our society.
What's the prevalence of histrionic personality disorder among the general population?
In Hollywood, sky high, and the rest of the country, not so high. But still, there's plenty. I mean, I can't.
That's awesome. In Hollywood, it's sky high.
That tendency to be colorful and flamboyant and emotional has a market in our society.
What's the prevalence of histrionic personality disorder among the general population?
In Hollywood, sky high, and the rest of the country, not so high. But still, there's plenty. I mean, I can't imagine anyone ever has a party without a few being there. It's that common.
Mm-hmm.
But it's. But
If it's a good party, you have a few for sure.
Dr. DeFrancesca, you reviewed her testimony.
Yes.
Dr. DeFrancesca has testified in this trial that histrionics, and using her words, are people pleasers. Is that the way you would describe a histrionic professionally?
When they're in a good mood, that's right. That
Catherine DeFrancesca was one of the final witnesses for the defense. There was 2 doctors the defense called, in addition to a number of Betty's friends and the judges from her family court trial.
what histrionics do is to entertain their viewers, whether it's on television or on a date, and they are colorful and they're flamboyant and they're fun.
Mom's in the chat. Hello,
as
Mom.
As long as you don't have to meet their needs, and then it can get tiresome and wear thin. But they can be very attractive and can be a great deal of fun to be with.
Play for the
They
party.
know how to work an audience, how to please the people that they want to please.
This is interesting because, as we know from watching true crime, if you light up a room, you're a prime target for a violent end. It sounds to me like a lot of victims, no, I don't want to victim bash, but a lot of victims may be histrionic personalities based off of this testimony. It's a joke. It's not a great joke.
And in that sense, that's true.
Did you have the opportunity to review a letter that the defendant wrote Dr. Dust in, I believe, 1988?
Excuse me. To Dr.
A letter that the defendant wrote to Dr. Dess in 1988?
Yes.
Oh, hold on. There's a Dr. Deaths. That's what threw me off the whole time. I was calling him Dr. Deaths. Well, I imagine Dr. Dietz doesn't like Dr. Deaths.
Do you have a copy of that with you?
Mhm.
Were there any particular passages that you took note of in that letter that are specifically illuminating of either the defendant's narcissistic or histrionic personality?
That explains
The defendant
everything.
wrote to Dr. Dess in 1988?
Yes.
Do you have a copy of that with you?
Mhm.
Were there any particular passages that you took note of in that letter that are specifically illuminating of either the defendant's narcissistic or histrionic personality?
Yes, there are quite a few.
Hey, Michelle. Good to see you.
Please go ahead.
Okay, the letter begins, Dear Dr. Dess, I am still waiting for the statement of a single fact that led you to your grandiose conclusion.
So this is a different doctor that diagnosed Betty, probably with grandiosity, which would explain why she called it a grandiose conclusion. That's very Sarah. Learn a new word, use a new word. That's how it becomes part of your vocabulary.
Now, that opening sentence is hostile and accusatory, which, because of the context, can be seen to be an example of this narcissistic rage. What has happened is that he has made a finding and given an opinion in connection with her custody and visitation pursuit that it's unfavorable to her, and she's enraged by that. And so she goes on to attack both him and Dan. In your letter of September 17, 1988, explaining your evaluation of the Broderick custody, I failed to find a single...
A to B, you can do it, but I don't recommend it. If you gift memberships on an iPhone, you basically pay 50% more for the membership. So I appreciate the thought, and I'm going to ring you out just for even asking. But it's good. It's a good reminder to anyone that's on an iPhone that's feeling generous. Save your money, do it from a desktop when it's convenient for you, because your membership and the memberships you gift will be the majority of what you're giving, rather than having to put 50 cents per dollar a month gift membership towards the Apple app tax. You might be able to do it if you're on a phone, but going through YouTube, like www.youtube.com off of whatever browser you use. It's not convenient either, but that's a way of getting around it on an iPhone. But thank you for asking. Thank you for the thought. The thought is what counts, and I truly appreciate it. I'm really blessed to have so many people buying and gifting memberships. I love the gifted memberships because some of the people who maybe joined my channel, 4 months ago just to see a few shorts might not realize that I do live streams and stuff like that now. So it's a great way of re-inviting people to the channel too. But yeah, don't gift from within the app unless you have money to burn. If you're Steve Jobs, by all means, gift as many as you'd like from your iPhone, Mr. Jobs. Message was brought to you by Apple. You can pay me futuristically for this prioristic endorsement.
Name or fact that leads to your dramatic and totally
Thank you,
erroneous
Larissa.
conclusion. If I have to tell this story again, I'm going to vomit. Well, that's an example of the narcissistic rage in response.
Go back just a little bit because the membership sponsorship took over the testimony there.
Leads to your dramatic and totally erroneous conclusion. If I have to tell this story again, I'm going to vomit. Well, that's an example of the narcissistic rage in response to criticism because she's very angry. It's obvious from what she writes. But it's also histrionic exaggeration. It's not that she's literally going to vomit.
Right.
It is that she feels that upset or wants to convey to an audience that she feels that upset. And at the same time,
Basically, it should be the cheapest for a membership. If it's charging you more than 99 cents US or $1.49 Canadian, and I don't know, if you're in Australia, you're probably closer to the Canadian dollar, but close to par. And I think if you're in the UK, it's almost double the Canadian dollar, so maybe 75p is what a membership is. If it's more than whatever the lowest is that you've ever seen, then it's too much. That price is too high.
and this has within it an example of the narcissistic grandiosity, that sense of being, of having a swelled ego, where she says that there's not a single fact in support of Dr. Dess's opinion. Well, that's not right, that there wasn't a single fact. However debatable it may have been, that wasn't an
I'll look
accurate
that up,
statement.
A to B.
She goes on saying, how dare you submit such bullshit to a court of law? How dare you challenge me to try and grasp the concepts herein when there's not a single concept within? Well, again, this is exaggerated. It is not an accurate statement that there is no concept there. It is an emotional, flamboyant, angry outburst put in print. Another example of this kind of histrionic
As of right
exaggeration
now,
is on page 3, where she says,
120
Mr. Broderick
members
is and always
active.
has been an abusive, obnoxious, cold-hearted, detached father. The kids hate him. Well, wherever the truth may lie, that's not exactly right. Or on page, I believe this is 5, where she writes, Mr. Broderick has never...
Yeah, 120 current active members of Dandy True Crime. There's also 100 people who were a member within the last month that have had their gift membership expire, which shows just how generous people have been with the gift memberships. It's a great way to give people who aren't, there's a lot of people. I personally didn't have memberships to any channels because I was, there was a time where I was in debt, and I was basically, I resolved that I wouldn't just spend money frivolously. As soon as I started earning from YouTube, thanks to memberships, I bought my first membership to Summa Cum Loudmouth's channel, who I've enjoyed for a long time. But my point being, there's going to be, people, YouTube is free entertainment, and so there's going to be some people that just don't buy memberships, and that is 100% fine. I love the idea of them getting a free membership just to, try out the badges and, see what it's like from the membership side of things. I think it does give you a little bit more visibility in the chat and that sort of thing too, especially if all messages isn't turned on. So I really like the way that the gift cascades throughout the community, as opposed to super chats that I don't have turned on right now, because I'd rather have people just gifting memberships if I can keep up with the chats anyway.
Taken a summer vacation with his kids, 17 years, exclamation point. And then on the next page, she says,
oh,
in fact, the same.
No, if you're paying $1.49 in Australia, that's probably the same, because I think Canada and Australia dollar is relatively at par. Last time I checked, I think you guys were like 96 or something cents on the dollar. I don't check that very often, but Candace is a new member. Welcome aboard, Candace.
Paragraph, Mr. Broderick feebly attempted to perform for the court by taking them to Hawaii and on a motorhome trip, which they hated. Well, not only does she contradict herself, saying he never took them on a trip, and then pointing out he just did.
Thank you,
but
Victoria.
it shows that he's
Victoria Carmen getting us back on track. Thank you for that. She mentions it wasn't a great friend because he went sailing the day she got arrested.
Damned if he does and damned if he doesn't. If he doesn't take him on a vacation, then he's no good. If he takes him on a vacation, then he's no good because he must have an ulterior motive. He can't win. She goes on to say, I have 9 volumes of diaries listing times and dates Dan Broderick has terrorized his kids.
9
physically and
volumes.
emotionally. Well, that's histrionic exaggeration.
9 volumes of diaries. Man, what would Third Rail do if they got their hands on that? 28 years of content.
Whatever he may have did, he did not terrorize them physically and emotionally, or more to the point, the 9 volumes of diaries, which I've had occasion to review, do not contain 9 volumes of material about Dan Broderick physically.
No, that's exactly it, Elizabeth. No, that was my point. I kind of trailed off there. Some people can't afford to subscribe, but enjoy listening and participate in the chat. 100%. Like it's, I don't want anybody who's, if you're living paycheck to paycheck, make the smart decision. Don't go out buying memberships to YouTube channels, especially mine, because anything you pay for, you also get for free. You have to watch, you have to watch ads anyway. You need premium for that too. So yeah, don't buy a membership if money's even a tiny concern in your life. But if it's not, then I still only activate the lowest possible denomination, because it's not about, for me, it's not about making a lot of money through memberships, but it's the only monetization that I've unlocked as I'm getting closer to 1,000 subscribers. So it's a way for me, like I've invested in a MacBook so I don't have to try and live stream from a 20-year-old laptop or vertically from my phone. So the more you invest in me, the more I invest in myself, but I'm never going to do content that is exclusive to people who pay for it. The closest thing I've come up with is with the pet montages. I might do like a monthly members pet montage, but even that, everyone can watch it and everyone can submit, but I'm just going to 100% make sure any members' pets 100% get into whatever I make. And if I can squeeze in a few subscriber ones too, I am happy to do that as well. So, hey, Detective Wilbefit's here. Martina the Mantis from Detective Wilbefit's home made it into the pet reel.
Emotionally terrorizing his kids. They have 9 volumes of what Betty Broderick has to say about many things, but that isn't there. There's no physical, emotional terror filling 9 volumes.
If I'm going to give a little plug to YouTube Premium, I resisted it because I've always felt I could just ignore ads, and it was getting annoying, I guess, because since I've had Premium, I don't think I can go back. I was able to gift it to my mom as well. We got the family membership, and this is a bit of a funny story. I might have already told it once. Anyway, since we got YouTube Premium, she's constantly streaming YouTube on the channel downstairs, because unlike the TV, there's no commercials. So you could just watch something and the next thing and the next thing. she's watching body cam videos. I go walking by. I have my own algorithm, and it's generally hot mess females that, are kicking the doors and screaming, and they look like they would be pretty on Tinder, but then you see them freaking out in the back of a cop car, and it's like just a little validation. Hey, stay single. Anyway, that's what's in my algorithm. Every time I was walking by the TV with mom watching, I noticed it was like mothers and sons doing crimes. And I was like, wow, YouTube's really good at picking because we're both watching true crime, but there was literally 3 videos within an hour that were mother and son criminals that were getting arrested together. I'm like, mom likes the family crime.
Or again, on page 11, he left me with no money in a leased car, leased house, both in his name. Not exactly a factually accurate account of what happened. Or he literally terrorized us. These reflect the kind of emotional exaggeration that I was describing. Page 13, there is not a single fact against me as a mother. Page 14, I am also the greatest mother to my 4 kids. There is not a single fact to deny that.
The greatest mother. Oh, that's even better than outstanding, I think. Outstanding is, probably a select few, but the greatest is one tier above that.
Page 15, because of Mr. Broderick's legal maneuvers, I have been without any competent legal representation all along. He's blaming others for her not keeping any of the lawyers she hires. Page 16, Mr. Broderick forcibly took possession of my home, furniture, money, kids. It's histrionic exaggeration about him taking forcible possession of all of those things. Page 18, I had been forcibly kept from my children for over 1 year, and I had no legal representation. That's not exactly the way things were. Page 20. Yeah, 20. I will not march quietly to the gas chamber. Well, I don't think that was in anyone's proposal at the time. These are emotional, colorful outbursts that reflect anger, they reflect emotion, and they intend to have an effect on their audience, get everyone upset, let people know how mad she is. But they can't be taken for accurate accounts of historical truth.
Dr. DeFrancesca has testified recently that, according to her, from her review of the case material, everything was fine with the defendant before 1983. Do you agree with that position, Dr. Dietz?
Well,
Your Honor, I'm sorry.
I'll repeat the question. Dr. DeFrancesca has testified earlier that in her review of the case file materials, at least that she looked at, that everything was fine with the defendant before 1983. Do you agree with that position?
no, I don't think that's quite accurate.
Can you explain first why that's not accurate?
Sure. Well, there's evidence of these same kinds of features being present before 1983, although it's also the case that her life prior to 1983 hasn't been scrutinized in anything like the same detail, because it's in light of the custody, divorce, and homicide trials.
I carved my name into the side of his pretty little souped-up four-wheel drive. Carved my name into his bucket seats. Mandy's remembering another woman scorned, Carrie Underwood song.
That her life's put under a microscope for recent years. So we have a lot more information about her recent history. But what information does exist about her behavior before that time is consistent with her having the histrionic and narcissistic patterns. For example, there's a passage in the Marriage Encounter book written in 1976. Where Mrs. Broderick wrote, "I've been attracted to and gotten to know what seems to be oodles of men of all types, sizes, and backgrounds. In most cases, after 5 minutes, I have no use for these people. In some cases, it takes quite a while before I write them off as no use to me." Well, that's a statement of someone who uses people. Her assessment of men she meets is, are these people of use to me? That's a posture, not a rare one, but a posture that people take when they are interpersonally exploitive. How can I use this person? Another example is in 1986, I mentioned earlier, she wrote in the same book that she needs admiration, or when she wrote that what she loved most about Dan was how much he loved her, that is, finding the reflection of her glory in his face, is, again, evidence of narcissism from before 1983. Locking Dan out of the house, criticizing him in front of other people, are examples of her having lack of empathy and perhaps narcissistic rage at that time. Her throwing things, scratching and digging in her fingernails, are all examples of times that she could be in a narcissistic rage. Or with respect to the histrionics, even that statement about the oodles of men is a histrionic-like way of phrasing things. But her threatening divorce when things weren't going just her way in the marriage is a histrionic thing to do. Her writing back in '76 that she likes to do what she feels like when she feels like. Again, evidence of her having that histrionic propensity even then. And I've no doubt that if the depth of investigation of her life from that earlier period were to produce as much data as from the later period, that we'd find lots more evidence. That assertion comes from the fact that these things don't have their onset in the 30s or 40s. These conditions have their onset probably in early childhood and always by the end of adolescence, early adulthood.
Now, were you aware that Dr. DeFrancesca diagnosed the defendant as being a borderline personality disorder?
Yes.
Do you agree with that diagnosis?
Well, I don't think the evidence supports it, though there are some features that are consistent with it and reasons why it's right to consider whether the evidence supports it. She has some of the sorts of behaviors that make one wonder if she has that.
What is a borderline personality?
Borderline personality disorder is a pattern, again, with criteria listed in DSM-3R, in which the essential ingredients, the things that must be present, are that there be a pervasive, long-standing pattern of unstable mood, of unstable relationships with other people, and of self-image. Those are the major things that must be true. Now, the unstable mood is something that it shares with histrionic. The shifting emotions of the histrionic could also be seen as the unstable mood of the borderline. There's some overlap between those. The unstable interpersonal relations in borderlines tend to be very pronounced, and it's one of the features that marks them, in that most clinicians have the view, I believe, I certainly do, that it's difficult for anyone to get along with a borderline personality disordered person for very long because the relationships become so unstable. These people are typically in and out of marriages constantly. Often there's a great deal of substance abuse or other highly impulsive, destructive acts. They will sometimes be in and out of seemingly intimate relationships within a week, may have several people with whom they have intense, passionate affairs, and then it's broken off. Very dramatic extremes. They're often described by those who know them as being like an emotional roller coaster. And because that is so very difficult to get along with, they do not often survive long in a stable relationship with anyone, which is one of the reasons I don't think that's applicable here.
You did say that the defendant did exhibit certain borderline traits.
Yes.
What were those that
I don't know about oodles, but I know zoodles are animal noodles.
you saw in the case file?
Well, some particular traits that are more characteristic of borderline.
Animals, tigers, lions, giraffes. Zoodles are animal noodles.
Than the other conditions. As I say, there's some overlap among these. There's some things that you could say it's a borderline trait, or maybe it's a narcissistic or histrionic, because they're all very related. But the things that are more borderline-like, for which there's evidence, are one in which she tends to see things in black or white. Sometimes this is referred to as splitting. an individual can be regarded by a borderline or someone who has this trait, which also occurs in narcissism, by the way, as being a very good person, somebody that's looked up to, admired, and respected. And then for some reason, good or bad, the reason could be trivial even, the person is suddenly denounced and is now regarded as the embodiment of all evil. And I think we see Mrs. Broderick doing that with Dan, as he went from being very highly regarded by her to being condemned and thought to be the root of all of her problems. That can be seen either as narcissistic rage, or if she were to go back and forth between those two states, it would be more like a borderline. If she were running back to him every few weeks saying, I love you passionately, we have to be together again, and they got together for a week and then it fell apart again, that's the way a borderline would tend to behave. On again, off again. But she does tend to see things in black and white. She's dealt this way with her friends. She's dealt this way with family members. She's dealt this way with children. And I think the second feature of borderline-like behavior that's most pronounced is one I've already talked about under other names. That's affective instability, her moodiness, her tending to respond emotionally. Histrionics do that, and they have these swings of emotions. Narcissists may do that too, though it's not one of the listed features. But in borderlines, one expects to see a lot of that. And so, once again, some of those examples could be called either way. I think on balance, though, when you look at all of the evidence...
Is Disney Mom weighs in on the poll question: an oodle of men, a gaggle of geese, a flock of birds, a murder of crows? Oh my, who knows? Many a noodle, how many a noodle is? I'm a-thinking quite a group Petty had. Yeah. Oodles of men lusting after her.
How her life has progressed. When you look exactly at what the criteria of DSM-3R specify, that the correct diagnoses were the ones that Dr. Goldsband rendered of histrionic and narcissistic.
Is the borderline personality disorder all that uncommon?
Many of us wish it were, because they're very difficult patients and they provoke so much trouble, but it isn't uncommon. It's become the most commonly diagnosed condition of the female college students who go to college mental health centers, for example. It's the bulk of their caseload these days.
Did you find in your complete review of the case file here any other significant personality traits that the defendant exhibited?
Well, there are quite a few examples of...
How much time do you got? And that said, we have 2 hours and 40 minutes remaining in today's broadcast. We're going with a hard close because Dr. Dietz' testimony continues into the next video. So based off of my personal family life schedule, I wasn't going to get to the end of this video today anyway. So we will pick up exactly where we left off, maybe even a couple minutes before, with the broadcast that will be starting 22 hours from now on the hour. So forget about the 10 minutes we're over right now. Whatever time it is now, add or subtract 2 from it, and that's when we're starting the stream tomorrow. Continue with Dr. Dietz.
All of the, not all, nearly all of the character traits described for that group of personality disorders that are in cluster B of the DSM-3R. The diagnostic manual divides the personality disorders into several clusters that are thought to be related to each other. The second one listed, there's A, B, C. This B, the second one listed, has narcissistic personality disorder, histrionic personality disorder, borderline personality disorder, and finally, antisocial personality disorder. I've already talked about the first 3, but Mrs. Broderick also has a lot of the adult features of antisocial personality disorder.
Doctor, let's move on to Dr. DeFrancesca's diagnosis that the defendant was suffering from major depression recurrent type. Do you recall looking at the transcript and seeing her arrive at that diagnosis?
Yes.
And you recall her testimony regarding that?
Yes, I do.
Do you agree with that diagnosis?
No.
Why is that?
No.
Well, there's several reasons why I don't think that the diagnosis is quite correct. The first is that none of the doctors who treated Mrs. Broderick diagnosed a major depressive illness. the doctor who knew her the best, Dr. Nelson, who treated her from early 1987 until July of 1989, testified that whatever depression Mrs. Broderick had didn't disable her and didn't make her inactive, and that the testing results, quote, showed no evidence of what we would call serious psychopathology, end quote. Moreover, Dr. Nelson saw her later in the latter part of 1989, just a month before the homicides, and he didn't find any major depression then either. Another reason is that Mrs. Broderick's diaries show times when she got upset for a day or two, but there were always obvious reasons for why she was getting upset. And the direction her upset took was not consistently depression or even a variation on the theme. That is, times she would be anxious, she would be angry, she would be what she characterized as hysterical. It's not often that she characterized herself as sad, though sometimes she said she was depressed. But more to the point, her diaries show these particular complaints to be fleeting. They didn't last long. She'd write about it for a day, sometimes 2 days in a row, then it wouldn't be there again, and she'd be back to talking about the other things. She'd have a day or two where she said she couldn't sleep, and then she'd make no mention of that for a while. Or she'd talk about a week when she gained some weight, and then that wouldn't be mentioned for a while. Or she'd talk about a time when she just didn't feel like doing much, but it wouldn't last long. A major depressive illness, that diagnosis, is only given when a particular set of signs and symptoms listed in the manual are present for a sufficient length of time. And the key is that the symptoms have to occur simultaneously. If someone has sleeplessness for a few nights one week, and the next week they gain weight, and the week after that they don't have any energy, and the week after that they feel sad, that isn't major depression. It all has to happen at once, and it has to stay that way for a period. Traditionally, the cutoff point was at least 2 weeks of feeling that way every day or nearly every day. We don't arbitrarily cut it off at exactly 2 weeks now, but the idea is there has to be a period of time where the person consistently feels this way. It can't just be that they had a bad day or that they had a lousy weekend. It has to be something more intense than that.
Case of the Mondays.
Also, it used to be thought that we wouldn't even count it as major depression if it had an obvious cause. That's changed, and we recognize that sometimes people can get a biological illness of a major depression, even when there's some provocation, something that's making them that way. Still, getting upset for things that have an obvious cause for a day or two doesn't mean one has that illness. Normal people sometimes get upset when bad things happen in their lives. Doesn't mean they have a mental illness to get upset about things. At none of the times that we have data about Mrs. Broderick, either from observers of her or from her diaries, does she have enough of the symptoms simultaneously for long enough to qualify for a diagnosis of major depressive illness. And no one who saw her before the homicides ever said she did. Yet another reason is her functioning. And this
good advice,
goes
Disney
to
Mom.
how bad any depression she had could have been. Because there's no doubt there were times Mrs. Broderick was depressed. Everyone who's seen her knows that there are times that she's been sad, times she's been depressed. Part of how we evaluate how severe a depression is to see whether it is this depressive disorder, the illness that I was just describing. But another way is to see whether the person can function even while they have that. Someone who gets sad and still keeps up with their work isn't as depressed as someone who's too sad to go to work that day or to get dressed. And they're not as severely depressed as someone who has the psychosis that their body's rotting from the inside and they're about to die, which is what happens in the most serious depressions.
Wow.
There are different severities of depression.
Wow. That bears repeating. I think there is a lot of misconception. I didn't realize it went to that extreme, but 35 years ago they knew this, and it's still not common knowledge. So let's just go back one full minute. We're at 134:17. The first time he mentioned about it being a biological condition, and that was relatively new to medical science at the time. It's a bit of a canary in the mine shaft for all of us about depression, and that you don't have to have a major event. You can just be depressed, and worth getting diagnosed if you are, so that you don't do something like this.
Reason is her functioning. And this goes to how bad any depression she had could have been. Because there's no doubt there were times Mrs. Broderick was depressed. Everyone who's seen her knows that there are times that she's been sad, times she's been depressed. Part of how we evaluate how severe a depression is to see whether it is this depressive disorder, the illness that I was just describing. But another way is to see whether the person can function even while they have that. Someone who gets sad and still keeps up with their work isn't as depressed as someone who's too sad to go to work that day or to get dressed. And they're not as severely depressed as someone who has the psychosis that their body's rotting from the inside and they're about to die, which is what happens in the most serious depressions. There are different severities of depression, from simple sadness up to those very sick psychotic illnesses. Well, to look at how someone's doing, one thing is to look at their symptoms, and others to see how they're getting on in life, what their functioning is. In Mrs. Broderick's case, her functioning was such that even if she had a major depression, which I don't think is evidenced, at most it could be mild in severity because of the things she was still capable of doing. She ran an independent household, including shopping for herself and shopping for other people. She decorated her house. She decorated her condo. She traveled extensively. She remained very involved in the children's school. She served on social committees. She had cosmetic surgery. She explored career opportunities, including a legal or paralegal career, looking at working at the art gallery in La Jolla, considered opening a photography studio, a photography business. She served as president of the investment club. She became involved in a legal reform organization known as HALT. She spoke at public hearings. She gave numerous interviews with reporters. She maintained a stable and intimate relationship with a boyfriend. She rewrote declarations that her lawyers had.
I was just expecting an objection. Facts not in evidence. She testified that he's just a friend. His marquee objection.
Drafted. She presented her own case in December of 1988. She planned camping trips with the boys, and she even wrote a book. That's functioning. That's getting on with life. That's doing things in the world, even if they weren't the things she most wanted to do. That's not the behavior of someone with a major depression who won't get out of the same pajamas or comb their hair day after day after day and week after week after week.
Doctor, do you recall Dr. DeFrancesca's testimony regarding depression on this masking concept, that sometimes the defendant would appear, quote, normal, but that was because she was masking her depression?
Yes.
Do you have any comments on that particular concept?
Well, there is such a thing as a masked depression, but most of the time that people don't look depressed, the explanation for that is that they aren't, not that they're masking it.
What about Dr. DeFrancesca's testimony that the defendant was consistently diagnosed in the past as being depressed by other mental health professionals? Do you agree with that position?
Well, as I said, everyone recognized there were times she was depressed, but no one ever diagnosed her as having a major depressive illness, as far as I could see, up until Dr. DeFrancesca did so, or at least up until after the homicides.
Does the evidence in your review of the entire materials of this case file show the defendant to have been suicidal when she was depressed?
It does not.
Can you tell us why that is?
Sure. Well, first of all, in many ways, Mrs. Broderick is too narcissistic to kill herself. She wouldn't want to spoil such a special and perfect thing as herself. It's difficult for narcissists to harm themselves because of the high regard in which they hold themselves. Secondly, there's no evidence that she ever attempted suicide. At the most, there is the phenomenon of histrionic gesture, in which she scratches her wrists and takes some pills about the house to call attention to.
That minimizes almost exactly the same way that Betty bumped the front door. You know, there's histrionic. She scratched her wrists. Surface, just an abrasion.
being upset.
Hey, welcome to the chat, Jane True. Welcome. Jane True, we'll give a little update too. Jane True is new to the chat. Saw it for the first time when it was on in real time, and just found the channel now. So welcome aboard. There's a lot of variety here. A lot of us are coming from knowing the Sarah Boone trial. So if you enjoy the coverage of this and don't know who Sarah Boone is, you're in for a treat. There's a few people here that are just like you that followed the Betty trial and found the channel because of it. There's a variety of opinions here in chat, but it's a very respectful place to say what you're thinking as you see it. And I appreciate you joining me live, because I think live is the way to build this archive. We're looking at this 35 years later. If you're part of the live chat, you get to shape the conversation. How are we analyzing this? I'm content to share views from all different spectrum of support, or support for Betty, or support for her verdict, or support for a stronger verdict, or support for a lighter verdict, all of that. It's a respectful place for conversation, and at the same time, I can be kind of disrespectful, so forgive me for that. I'm used to it from my Sarah coverage. I'm trying to be more open-minded, and I came into it with more of an open mind towards Betty, so full disclosure where I am now. The testimony hasn't been great from Betty, and I would probably be able to be convinced of second degree as part of the jury at this point, and Dr. Dietz is just getting started. Dr. Dietz here is an expert witness who, in the 35 years between cases, has testified in a number of high-profile cases. So we're getting not just a look at the Betty Broderick case, but an expert witness that stood the test of time. We're looking at the inception of Court TV. This is only the second trial of Court TV's emergence as an actual broadcasting channel that broadcasts entire trials live. Pamela's Smart trial was the first. I remember somebody in the chat mentioning that they were getting a lot of teachers assaulting students in their feed, and Pamela Smart would definitely be one of the first ones of those. Anyway, welcome aboard, Jane, and hope you enjoy the coverage here. We've got about 1.5 hours left in today's live stream, and we'll be starting again tomorrow, 21.5 hours from now.
And doesn't do anything that in fact could bring about death. Now, there are teenage girls who mistakenly think sometimes that taking certain kinds of medications that actually won't harm them may kill them. But Mrs. Broderick had been married to Dan during medical school, and she's an intelligent woman, and she knows what's capable of producing death and what isn't. So this is a histrionic gesture, not a suicide attempt to scratch her wrists and take some pills. She also said that she'd never kill herself and give Dan what he wanted. Even when she was feeling her worst and listed various complaints in her diary, including going pretty far down the chain of what sort of things one's likely to complain about. What she didn't do is mention thoughts of suicide. And in fact, when one looks at the diary entries surrounding the times that she's said she was suicidal, there isn't any mention in the diary of her being suicidal at those times. A fifth reason is that her anger was always directed outward, much more than it was directed inward. She was very angry for a long period of time, but she made it rather clear to whom she was directing her anger, and it wasn't herself. Sixth, when she made threats, it was threats of homicide. She repeatedly threatened homicide, but she wasn't repeatedly threatening suicide. Seventh, she was recognized by others as being at risk of homicide, but not of suicide. In fact, even to the point that Dan and Linda hired guards at various points to protect them from her. Multiple people knew that she was at risk of killing them. Eighth, she'd shown some of the very specific signs of someone being dangerous to others, that is, warning signs of homicidal behavior, such as uttering threats to kill, not just when she was angry and emotional and being histrionic, but even when calm. Calm threats to kill are much more ominous and predictive than sort of hysterical outbursts. And she had made even calm threats. She'd also...
That's a point worth bearing. Calm threats are... What? How did exactly... I'm not going to even repeat it if I can't say it word for word.
Calm threats to kill are much more ominous and predictive than sort of hysterical outbursts. And she had made even calm threats.
Calm threats are much more predictive and ominous than even histrionic ones. It's not exactly perfect, but just want to put that into my head. That's one of those comments that just makes me feel smarter for having heard it.
She'd also destroyed symbols of Dan, which is another one of the predictors of who was likely to kill another person. She had defaced a photograph of Dan. She'd burned his clothing. Those are...
Damn it, Janet, I got your name wrong. It's not Jane True, it's Janet True. For whatever reason, I thought the T was just the connecting piece of architecture between Jane and True, but it's Janet.
Symbolic moves of the kind that we've learned through research, I happen to do research on that phenomenon, are predictive of violence toward other people. And she had even assaulted Dan's home with her vehicle, which caused him to emerge where she could engage him in face-to-face combat. Those are behaviors predictive of violence toward others, not predictive of violence towards oneself. The ninth reason is that even in her book, which she claims was written when she was suicidal, she doesn't make any mention of being suicidal. And on the contrary, what she wrote was, quote, "If this is the way domestic disputes are settled in the courts, is there any wonder there are so many murders?" So, in contrast to her saying she was suicidal, what she implies was she realizes that murders grow out of events like these. And the 10th reason is that she committed homicide, not suicide.
Doctor, you testified that personality disorders such as narcissism and histrionic personalities develop in late adolescence. Is that correct?
That's right. Or at least by then. That is, they may well be firmly fixed by age 3 or 4 in the eyes of some of the people who studied this, but they're at least in place by late adolescence or early adulthood.
Are these personality disorders caused by, let's say, a bad marriage?
No.
Or a spouse having an affair?
No.
Or a divorce?
Well, maybe of one's own parents plays a part in it.
You're talking about during or before adolescence, I assume.
Right.
That's an interesting point, too. So instead of the contention from the defense that Dan did this to her, the state is bringing up a fact that maybe Betty's own life is what helped turn her, and then the implication by extension is that it's 100% Betty's responsibility. The fact that she, it's still sad if her own parents' marriage troubles caused her to spiral out of control, but it definitely absolves Dan of any role in justifying her actions.
Main difference between personality disorders and somebody who's, let's say, has a psychotic mental illness?
Well, in a psychotic mental illness, individuals have one of the symptoms of psychosis by definition. You can't have a psychotic mental illness unless you have either hallucinations or delusions.
Politically incorrect. You're thinking of Nancy Brophy, and interestingly, Nancy Brophy killed her husband Dan, so it's Dan Bro and Dan Bro. If you're looking for a connection between the Nancy Brophy and Betty Broderick cases, 2 Dan Bro victims.
Or a thought disorder. Now, hallucinations are things like hearing voices or seeing things. They're perceptions that are not true. Mrs. Broderick never had any hallucinations, and no one has ever said she did, to my knowledge, not in any of the materials I've seen. Delusions are such features as patently false or absurd beliefs, believing that the planes flying overhead are giving one a particular set of messages about when the Martians are going to invade. That's a delusional belief. Mrs. Broderick's never had any delusional beliefs in the opinions of anybody who has dealt with her in any of the materials I've had occasion to look at. And the third feature of a psychotic illness is that of a disorder of the form of thought. Now, that's a technical phrase that refers to having one's thinking so disturbed that it's impossible for the person to really communicate meaningfully with other people. So, for example, someone who can only speak in rhymes and riddles and no one can understand.
I don't like his demeanor either.
May have a serious thought disorder. Or the individual who can only communicate with special words that they make up, or who's always making up words, can have a thought disorder. There are lots of other ways in which thought disorder happens, but there's no evidence Mrs. Broderick ever had one. The features of psychosis, of psychotic mental illnesses, are all those things that mean that someone's out of touch with reality because they're seeing things or hearing things, or they can't communicate with other people, or their beliefs are taken over by the mental illness. The mental illness interferes greatly with a person's life, and there's nothing they can do about it except get treated for it. Whereas in personality disorder, it's the pattern of behavior that is in conscious awareness. The individual knows what they're doing, knows why they're doing it, makes choices, makes their own decisions, plots their own course, and they're not ruled by it. That is, in personality disorder, the condition doesn't rule the person rules the condition, and they behave as they wish on purpose.
Doctor, does a personality disorder make a person crazy?
No.
Does it prevent a person?
Also another really feels like the kind of thing like this will be on the test, write it down.
Decisions, plots their own course, and they're not ruled by it. That is, in personality disorder, the condition doesn't rule the person rules the condition, and they...
In personality disorder, the person doesn't rule... Get that straight again.
Decisions, plots their own course, and they're not ruled by it. That is, in personality disorder, the condition doesn't rule the person rules the condition. And
the condition doesn't rule the person rules the condition. In personality disorder, the person doesn't rule, the condition doesn't rule the person rules the condition.
They behave as they wish on purpose.
Doctor, does a personality disorder make a person crazy?
No.
Does it prevent a person from knowing what he or she is doing?
No, it doesn't.
Does it cause amnesia or to make the person forget things that they've done?
No, it doesn't.
Does it prevent a person from being deceptive?
From what?
From being deceptive.
No, it does not prevent that.
Does it prevent a person from planning things and acting according to that plan?
No.
And does it prevent a person from making choices of what course of conduct to take?
No.
Thank you. I have nothing further.
We'll take our 3 seconds for that.
Okay, we'll take actually a quick break here for... Well, that's a Diane von Furstenberg dress that we speculated might be maker of one of the previous witnesses.
The voices in my head.
This is Betty at the parole hearing. I think it is. Let me make sure that that showed up on the screen. Yep, that's it. Okay. Let me go to the other viewpoint so you can see more of the back of Betty's head there. Oh, I'm going to have to move myself out of the way too. Myself over here and take the names down. All right, this is about 2 minutes long. If you've watched the whole trial, I've played this before, so you can use the opportunity to... It's 4 minutes long. You can use the opportunity to go have a break and stretch your legs if you haven't seen this before. Pretty wild. This is a little bit of Betty's parole hearing.
To completely take over. I heard all the past voices of all the bad things from my parents and my kids and Dan and everybody else, and I'm this horrible, awful, worthless failure of a human being. And then I allowed the stress of losing my house and going to jail and not having a home to put the kids, because if he throws me in jail again, I lose my house. And I was just afraid of...
Mrs. Broderick, stop right there a minute, okay? You're worried about your husband putting you in jail again. Yet, you consciously take the gun that you purchased in March, you go to the house, which You got a key to get in, okay? It's not like you knocked on the door and rang the doorbell here, okay, and said, hello, hey, can we chat? You didn't do that. You went in the back door. You knew the house well. You went to the bedroom. It's 5:30 in the morning, and you killed 2 people.
I went to Dan's house to ask him to just give me the kids and leave me the hell alone. This is too many years of this ongoing stuff. And I never got to ask him or say anything. Linda came at me, and the gun went off over and across the bed, and the physical evidence proves that. And I didn't think of anything. I wasn't thinking.
I don't want, we're not going to,
It
we're
certainly
not here
didn't
to
help
retry
anything.
you, okay? But the physical evidence doesn't show that, and you're here on a murder second.
I know.
Okay? You got convicted of this crime, all right? The evidence would show that a different thing happened here. My question is, you wrote a suicide note. How come you didn't commit suicide?
I was going
How come
to.
you didn't do it after you killed your husband,
I didn't have
your
any
ex-husband?
bullets. I didn't have any bullets left. I was just startled. It wasn't, I don't even remember pulling the trigger even once. I was just startled.
Miss Broderick, you went to that
I
home
did.
with a gun. You went to that home with a loaded gun. You went to that home uninvited at 5:30 in the morning when most people are in bed asleep. Okay? So you can see where the commissioner, can you understand where she's coming from? She lunged at you. Excuse me, you weren't even
That's what
supposed to be
scared me.
there.
I know.
You're in there with a gun.
I know.
So there was some intent to go there to do something more than just chit-chat.
I was obviously not thinking straight or thinking clearly at all, and I thought if I had the gun, I could make them listen to me.
You told me earlier you don't even remember pulling the phone from the wall.
I don't remember pulling the phone, but Dan spoke to me. Dan spoke to me without any pain or any...
So this is pretty wild, eh? Like, I believe this is the last one in 2017. Her last parole hearing, if this is it, judging from the styles, it looks kind of 2017, but I guess you can't really tell it from 2010. And there's no... Oh, the computers on the back. Flat screen computers? No, that's maybe it. Yeah. Someone could probably figure out something from this, but her 2017 hearing went so poorly that the parole board gave her the longest review period until her next one, which is 2032, a 15-year review period. Her last review period was 7 years, so it's a sign of how little remorse and how little they thought of the parole performance of Betty.
flinching or anything. Dan said, okay, you got me. Like that. And I had no bullets left or anything. I just ran out of the room. But that's why I didn't know he was hit or anything was wrong with him. And I thought he was chasing me. And I was running away from Dan. He spoke to me absolutely clearly with no pain. I had no idea he was hit. I thought he was chasing me. He spoke to me clearly. Plain.
His little fingers were coming out of the suitcase. I thought I had, it was my life. It was mine or his. I'm only here because I survived. Getting vibes of that.
Plainly. I have great remorse and feel terrible.
The Linda coming at her, I think A to B, I think you're correct. I think that was one of the things that might have changed between trial 1 and trial 2, like an embellished detail to make the story. But because I think Carrie Wells brought up that your original testimony didn't say that, but it's hard, it's still her word on both stories. So unreliable narrator.
All the needless, senseless pain and suffering I've caused so many. I took the lives of 2 wonderful people who were loved by many. For that, I will be forever sorry. That was never my intention.
So this is where, okay, so that's the look that she gives when her verdict is being read, I believe. And what she just said, her words are more than I think Sarah would ever say. I don't think it makes them any more powerful, but I don't think Sarah's even capable of saying that. I think Sarah's sorry is always followed by, I'm sorry for what you did to me. But she did manage a little bit of a real sorry there. Not much one, but we'll go back for it.
people who were loved by many. For that I will be forever sorry. That was never my intention. If staying in prison longer would change something or bring them back, I would do that. But that would accomplish nothing. I can never undo or repair the damage I have done in the past. My only hope is to go forward in peace and love and try to heal this family.
That was that. Okay. So welcome back from the break. I think the courtroom's also returned from their break, so we'll pick it right back up. We have just over an hour left in today's broadcast. I'll be putting up the clock widget to let you know the countdown, and it will be a hard countdown, so this clock will not be adjusted for commentary. It'll just mean we have less of the raw audio. This particular video, we still have, how much of it? 3 hours, 2 hours, 2.5 hours of raw audio. So lots of this is going to be part of tomorrow's video, and then tomorrow's will be at least the remainder of Dr. Park Dietz' testimony, and we may start with the closing arguments from both sides on Friday.
Let's take the recess. Take our afternoon recess at this time, ladies and gentlemen. We'll be in recess until 3 o'clock. Please remember the admonition. People of the State of California versus Elizabeth Broderick. Court finds all members of the jury panel are present. All counsel are present. Mrs. Broderick is present. Dr. Dietz is back on the witness stand. You may proceed, Mr. Early.
Dr. Dietz,
I got to move myself.
when part of your business is having a company that
That was my Dr. Dietz impression, I guess.
stars in Hollywood, senators, people like that. Is that not correct?
Well, actually, more of the work is toward Fortune 500 companies, but occasionally I do work on behalf of Hollywood celebrities.
Mary's replacement is in today.
Senators now.
Okay. Well, you also, there's some political figures that you have a company that holds itself out to. Is that correct? For consulting?
I've done research on threats to political figures, and I suppose the only political figures that I've done consulting for have been judges. I don't think there are any other kinds of political figures.
Your Honor, excuse me, I think the microphone is turned off.
I didn't notice that. I was getting his audio okay, but have we moved to the cross-examination? Is this Dr. or Mr. Early? Sounds like his voice a little bit.
Oh. Thank you.
Mechanical engineer.
The judge is out there being a techie. You know, there's a lot of side chatter about how the judge just sits back and does nothing, but look at that. Going back. You can see his hand right at the top of the frame. He's coming in. He's going to fix things.
Thank you.
Mechanical engineer.
You list in your resume.
Judge Thomas Whelan for you. The Harry Anderson of Night Court of 1991.
Number of cases that you've been involved in. Is that correct?
Yes, there's
This is cross.
a list
Okay.
of some of them.
It's the well-known cases that you've been involved in. Is that correct?
Those are the ones that are listed.
And you, in fact, as you do these cases, you sometimes then use them as a form of a basis for you to give lectures and to be invited to places to speak on. Is that correct?
I've probably given half a dozen, maybe as many as 10 talks that involve some notable case or a notable case or another.
Okay. And at times when you take the cases, you know that they will become either parts of books or other writings of yours. Is that not correct?
There are times that I hope to use a case for case history of something I'm writing about, yes.
Okay. And that's before you testify even. Is that correct?
Did I know that?
Yes.
Well, sometimes. I mean, for example, I'm not writing about anything this case is relevant to, but someday I might.
Now, at the time that you do get paid for your work, do you know?
Most of the time,
Okay, and you were paid on this case.
yes.
And were you paid a flat fee, an hourly fee?
An hourly rate.
And what was your hourly rate?
For Dr. Lipian's time, $125 an hour. For my time, $300 an hour.
Okay. Now, you've written articles before about psychiatrists and the different motives they have, whether they're retained or appointed, haven't you?
Yes.
Okay. And you wrote one in 1986, did you not? About doctors and the various, the way that things may affect how they look at cases based on whether they're retained, appointed, part of the system.
I think it was 1986. I did write about how some of the market forces provide incentives.
Okay. And you wrote then that private psychiatrists can charge anywhere from $125 to $200 an hour. Those are the figures you used, is that correct?
I don't recall, it may be. That sounds what the rates had been at that time.
Okay. And so the rate since 1986 now is gone from up to your rate of $300 an hour.
Now it's actually gone up higher than that.
Okay. Now, at the time that you were reading a number of passages from Elizabeth Broderick's writings at times as examples of her behavior, is that something that you can almost pick out of anybody? You can take one of their writings and probably pick out an example of what kind of behavior they might have?
You couldn't pick examples of those conditions out of just anybody's writings, but you could, out of anyone's writings, look for examples of personality disorder features and maybe find them.
Now, at the time that you pick out examples, the best way to do that so someone understands what someone's to talk about is sometimes to give context to what we're talking about. Isn't that right? When you try as a professional to give context to why someone might give a certain answer. Isn't that right?
Sometimes it's needed to clarify.
In the marriage encounter, there is various questions that are asked of the people, and then they're required to give.
The marriage encounter, thank you to Kelia, who I don't see in the chat right now, but commented on another video. Marriage encounter was a popular Catholic marriage counseling couples thing in the 80s, 90s, is what Kelia posted on one of the videos. So as somebody who is neither Catholic nor married, especially not in the, well, especially not, if you're not married, you're not married, but I would have been a little young to be married in the mid-80s anyway.
Answers as part of the marriage encounter, isn't that correct?
Some of the format was questions and answers, yes.
So, for instance, where you said that Gabe is part of her personality disorder before 1983, and you were talking about people seem to envy us. The question that was asked is, what do I like about best about us? Isn't that correct?
Yes, that's what I think I testified to.
She also talked that they have nice kids. Is that correct in that answer?
I don't remember what the other four were, but there were four other things, I think.
They talked about that we're both smart.
Hey, I've activated Kelia.
We both.
Kelia is now a member of the chat. Good morning, Kelia. You're here for the final hour of today's broadcast.
Work hard. Those were other things that she said that they liked about us. Isn't that correct?
Yes.
Those are all things that you would say are either narcissistic, histrionic, or antisocial, those answers?
No, I thought those answers were true.
Okay. So the fact that you were able to pick out one answer and say that somehow, and you didn't think
1
that
hour,
it was true that people seem to envy them?
That might be true, but I also think that liking that is one of one's most valued traits. Reflects something unusual. People like having the things that would be envied, but liking being envied is not an ordinary trait.
Did
Did you happen to read?
that gets me to something that's come up in a lot of these broadcasts, where it's, if you ever find that money is the thing that's most important to you, you've got to reset your priorities. Even if your priorities are the things that money can buy that are important, and those are shallow things, that's better than the money itself. So if you just want to travel the world and, so you seek money so that you can endlessly, be leisure, that's still better than seeking money, because at least you're enjoying your state of leisure when you have it. With money, there'll never be an amount that is satisfying if money is your most important thing. So if things are your most important things, you know, there's going to be a certain amount where you're like, you know, I'm having a good time with my things. But yeah, if it's just chasing the envy of people, you know, I need to have this bag because I need 12 people to give me the look like, oh, she's got a Louis Vuitton bag. If that gives you more satisfaction than the bag itself, don't buy the bag. Go see a psychiatrist.
Your whole marriage encounter?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay. Now, she talked about her weak points in there, did she not? She gave some indications of what were her.
Yeah, desiring to pay your electric bill, that's certainly a fine use of money. But yeah, then that's a desire to pay your electric bill, and having that paid, if that gives you satisfaction, is at least a more satisfying thing because it's paid than acquiring money as your number one goal, because there's never enough. You never have all the money.
Weak points, is that right?
I recall something of that, yes.
Okay, she didn't see herself as perfect.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, so Catholic-specific marriage counseling. So it probably involved faith. Politically Incorrect is asking about marriage encounters. But yeah, it's I guess maybe even offered through the church, and that has its own issues. I've seen some Netflix documentaries about, I think it's the Latter-day Saints, where there's, if you have, you know, a couple's relationship, you seek therapy through the church. You don't seek outside experts for therapy, and that seems a little dangerous if somebody's powerful within the church and their spouse is the one that's being abused. You're not getting a fair shake from anyone that you go see. So yeah, I think see a professional. But I can see the allure of going somewhere faith-based if you're, you know, a regular at the church and you trust the people that are there. You've seen other people get help like that. That makes sense too. But we'll move on. Mr. Dietz just sits there through the pauses too. He's attentive, but not uncomfortable with silence.
I'd like to ask you about this passage, and you tell me what.
Okay, Janet, you're just in live. I've tried to advocate for her on the alimony. So it was $16,000 a month she was awarded by the end. Some of the things that, and in today's money, I think somebody else calculated it near $47,000 a month. So, you know, obviously significant. I could live off $16,000 a month and be thrilled. The only thing that helps give me some sympathy for Betty, considering those mathematics, is just, let's say, you know, she was married to Bill Gates or Steve Jobs in the early 80s. And, you know, she's working 2 or 3 jobs investing while he's staying at home and working on a stupid little computer project. And one day the stupid little computer project starts making good money, a couple years before it makes amazing money. And Steve Jobs says, you know what? You did put a lot into it, so I'm going to double your money. Here's $100,000. You no longer have any stake in the company, and I'm moving on with my 22-year-old secretary. We're going to get married. Now I can have more empathy for Betty. I can see why she's like, no, I'm not accepting $16,000 a month, $47,000 in today's money. I'm pissed off, and I want 75%. I want more than I'm legally entitled to because you're a fucking asshole. So I think, and that's why I say don't let money be the focus, because if she had the foresight, and we can look back, it's obvious that, you know, at that amount of money, she could have built her own separate business. She could have done lots of things that could have given her the direction and satisfaction in life that she would never had to take this path. But as long as it was about what she was entitled to and wanting money and wanting those things, those were all messing up her her focus. And, you know, you can question whether Dan caused it or whether he didn't, but ultimately not seeking help when your priorities are so out of whack that you're hurting your own kids over money. That's where this case gets interesting. Anyway, thank you for that, Janet. True?
Those as her being the points that show that she is narcissistic and histrionic as a disorder in 1983. Darling Dan.
Objection, Your Honor, if it was not a passage that was referred to or relied upon in the basic forming the basis of this opinion, that's incorrect. I'll just simply read it.
Sustain at this point, show if you're relied on that.
Was there parts of the marriage encounter that you just threw out and said, since they don't prove my point, they're irrelevant? Or did you look at the whole marriage?
Mr. That's inappropriate.
Okay, I'll ask the question, Your Honor. Did you look at the whole marriage encounter and consider the whole marriage encounter, or did you only pick out parts of it and say, these are the only parts to me that are relevant?
I read the entire thing and I looked to see if there were examples of any of the characteristics of psychopathology.
And did you feel that the whole marriage encounter showed at least what her personality or how she thought about herself? Or are you saying that you were able to pick out just one or two lines in abstract and that the rest didn't tell you anything?
Well, I wasn't asked to address the life and times of Mrs. Broderick, only whether she had mental conditions.
Well,
And so that's what I, of course, looked for. But I did read it all, and I think that it did give a fair accounting of how she wanted to present herself to her husband at that time.
okay. And so by reading the marriage encounter, you would get, at this point in time, you didn't believe that.
I don't know if it's just the lens today, because Dr. Park Dietz does look a little more blush, but yeah, this is a case where even Suma would be like, you know, little blush might be too much today. Your face is looking a little pink.
That she, that November 9th, 5th, 1980.
I wouldn't like having a psychiatrist just taking apart my entire mental state in front of the cameras and everyone that you imagine watching, plus your boyfriend in the front row of the stand. Yeah, that look right there says it all, Betty. Says it all.
9 was on her mind, did you? In other words, you didn't think that she was writing this
thank you, Janet.
This trial.
If you like the comparisons to Boone, you definitely will enjoy my channel. So I appreciate you coming in. If you do want to check out my channel to get a little taste of it, check out the shorts first, because that's how I got started, and it's not a huge time investment, and then kind of move around at will. But there's a playlist called All the Dan D Shorts, and yeah, I'd recommend that's a great way to get started if you're new to the channel and like a little Sarah Boone sass.
No, I thought she was writing it for Dan and for the sake of their marriage.
Okay. So it would tell you something about reading it, about how she, if I withdraw the question, you indicated that that now if we could look back and we could find some writings of hers, we would then know what she was like as a person. We would have more scrutiny. This was a writing of hers done pre-1983, is that correct?
It's a little bit of the color correction, because if you look at the back of Mr. Early's head, and I was looking at his hands during that, if you're not tan, you're coming off pink. Retract a little bit of what I said about Betty looking super pink. Maybe a little blush would help.
That's true.
Okay. So in here, by going through the passages, we would have some idea of what she was like as a person when she wouldn't have necessarily the motives she even had in 1985 or 86 when she's looking at a divorce. Would you agree with that?
I think it would give you a very good view of how in 1976 Mrs. Broderick wished to appear to her husband.
Okay. I'm going to read you then this passage. It occurs to me how long it's been since we have written letters, and I like them so much, both to write and receive them. I'm really liking this weekend. We've been so right in the past, recognizing what's wrong with us. We're so smart about that, but it seems we cannot go beyond that, and I hope we will start to now. I love the part about the opposite of love is indifference. We never hated each other, but we have, or at least I feel you have been guilty of the opposite of love, and it really hurts. Do you feel an accurate representation of what she's like? Or is this part of the histrionic or narcissistic personality?
I think that that's a genuine statement, if that's what you're asking, that she finds herself feeling hurt when he seems indifferent to her. Now, what would have to do with her personality makeup
Hey, Deborah Rockhill, welcome.
would require, on a point like that, knowing whether objectively he was being indifferent. If she perceived it as indifferent, even when what he was doing most people would perceive as warm and sensitive and generous, then that could be reflective of her excessive need for attention, that what for most people would be thought warmth, to her seemed indifferent.
You read his marriage encounter, didn't you?
No, I didn't.
You didn't read his at all?
No.
So when you were given these volumes of books and paper, that part never was given to you and you never requested it?
By the time I knew it existed, I already knew that I'd been, that there was a ruling that I already knew what the limits of my testimony were going to be, and that they would not be including.
When did you get it?
So basically, prior to trial, I think it's called voir dire, they would have excluded that sort of testimony from the defense. Basically, you're not getting into Dan's psychology or asking questions about it. It's not relevant to the case because it doesn't change the fact that you killed him. There's no amount of, he was an asshole that gives you the right for cold-blooded murder or second degree or manslaughter for that matter.
When did you get involved in this case?
Many months ago.
Before the trial began?
Oh, yes.
And when did you get this material?
The marriage encounter book?
No, all these transcripts of the last trial.
The transcripts of the last trial, again, many months ago.
Before the trial began?
Yes, that's right.
And the marriage encounter was mentioned in the last trial, was it not? And actually read to the jury, or the jury read it? Objection irrelevant.
Oh, Rose can answer that, if you remember.
I don't remember, but I knew that there were lots of writings by her and had lots of those. I didn't know of the separate thing called the marriage encounter book until quite recently.
Okay, so you didn't read the whole trial transcript. Sometimes your associate did that.
I don't think he read the entire trial transcript either, only the testimony of particular witnesses, the ones that were mentioned before.
Yeah.
And as to which of us read which parts, I'm not sure I could even reconstruct all that now.
Did the both of you together read the whole trial transcript, or was just you focused in on particular witnesses?
I know that I read all of the testimony of the mental health professionals, and I know that I read all of the direct and cross-examination of Mrs. Broderick. I think that it was Dr. Lippian who first summarized the testimony of Kim and Lee Broderick.
Did you read any of the other witnesses that were called to trial?
I don't recall reading any of them, no.
Did you recall reading any testimony of friends and acquaintances of Elizabeth Broderick?
No, only the ones that I listed before.
Did and you say that you were told that you didn't read one marriage encounter because you didn't think that it was going to come into evidence?
No.
That's misleading. He's been limited to what he can express an opinion.
Hey, LCB.
Okay.
Thank you for voting.
She goes on to say, this is all true. Now, I don't know what else to say except I love you, and I hope we can...
Yeah, the exact timeline, Janet True, who says she committed the double homicide like 2 or 3 years after he left her. It's a long time to rage. 1985 was the breakup. There's probably, probably things weren't great just before 1985. 1989 was the eventual settlement. And then 1989 was also the year that Dan and Linda got married, 10 days after what was Dan and Betty's original anniversary date. And then shortly after that was the murders on November 5th, 1989.
Accommodate each other better. One of the big hurdles I'm up against is your refusal of the need to share. I really think all people do, but you're saying that you don't. Now, is her need to, at least her expression of a need to share, is that something that's narcissistic, histrionic?
Not of itself, no.
This has got to be a mutual type of fulfilling each other's needs, but you keep saying you don't have these needs, which I believe. But in a way, I feel sorry for you that you don't open yourself up to some wonderful happiness. I think your self-image is so guarded that you're not living life and enjoying it to the fullest. Is that something that is her narcissism or her histrionics at that time?
Not unless it's misleading.
So if she's lying about what she said there, then yes, it is. Which, that's a clever way to answer that question. It could be if she's writing that intentionally to make herself look good. No way to know that without getting into her head, but...
Is her narcissism or her histrionics at that time?
Not unless it's misleading.
The
And that's another good point. Kitten Pusher says, speaking from experience, rage can be a hole that the more you dig out, you dig in. And if you think about that, like, if you're in a hole, continuing to dig is not the way out of the hole. It's just, you're going to make a bigger hole and the walls are going to collapse in on you. You've got to somehow, build a staircase out, and you need to be, carving your way back up to the surface. You can't just stay there digging your own grave, literally, figuratively probably, unless you're out there with a shovel doing it.
You read some quotes about
Thank you, politically
her
incorrect.
feelings about her being the center of attention. Did you
Well, that's a good question, Kelly. Yeah, I'll put it to the poll.
did she talk about things that she needed that were important to her, like listening to people, writing don't interrupt at all, don't comment, don't shift eyes on position, don't be assured you know what's coming? Did she talk about needing to listen to other people's feelings?
I read that, but I couldn't tell from the context whether this was advice given to everyone about how to be a better listener, or whether this was someone's critique of her and she was trying to learn how to develop empathic listening skills that she lacked. I couldn't tell. It looked like an exercise program to me.
When you talked about someone that would need to be the center of attention, she writes, at first it sounds trivial, but when I really think about it, you are the most important person I have in the whole universe, bar absolutely none, and I'll be lost without you. That's the person who feels that that the world evolves around them. That's what she's saying.
That's what she said.
She is expressing her dependency and seeking to make it plain to her husband that he's important to her.
She talks in there about feel like I'm living in a very bad Del Mar fog, or that snowstorm we drove through once, like speeding along, not seeing what is ahead, anticipating a terrible thing to happen to us at any second, losing touch with the world, unable to cling to anything secure. I like the sunshine and I long for the clarity and predictability and security in our lives. Now she's talking about their lives together. Was that someone who was only using that relationship as she would in that her borderline personality or in her narcissistic personality?
Someone who is expressing feelings of insecurity and seems to sense that the marriage was in trouble even then.
Quick shout out to all the April birthdays. Month of April's almost over. Mr. Early's pretty nice about giving me pauses to say stuff, so happy birthday, April people. It's your birthday.
Now you indicated that she was somebody who was who would want to be in command and problems with that. Is that something that you would see with somebody who's narcissistic, wanting to be in control?
I don't understand the question.
Well, is part of narcissism wanting to be in control?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
Yeah, no, that's being controlling. I bet there's a lot of controlling narcissists, but they're separate.
Is there anything that you saw about her that she needed to be in control of things?
I think there's some indication of that, yes.
Okay. Now, needing to have some control over your life, that's not necessarily bad, is it?
No.
Okay. And in a marriage, when somebody is making decisions on what furniture they buy, what they're going to spend money on in the house, does that show a disorder because the other spouse would like to be involved in that?
No.
Disney Mom's an April birthday. I think Detective Wobbuffet had an April birthday. Ba-na-na-na-na-na. They say it's your birthday.
You read one line out of
my favorite birthday song, I think, was from The Simpsons.
the cases out of the marriage encounter in regards to her using people. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Now, that was actually a whole thing that she wrote, a whole letter, and that was just one line in the middle. Isn't that correct?
I think it was more than one line. You're talking about the oodles of men,
Oodles.
Yes.
but it was just one part of a larger piece.
Okay. And what she
We determined oodles of men is somewhere between 15 and 1,000. That was what the poll said on how many are in an oodle. It did make me recall that zoodles were animal noodles, but that had nothing to do with an oodle.
wrote is, I feel
Also, if you follow cowboy criminology, he'll tell you about an OODA loop. It's called orient, observe, distract, and oh, I'm really close to it. Yeah. But yeah, you throw your suspects for an OODA loop. They don't know what's going on. You zig when they think you're zagging. Keep them off balance. You get the real info.
concerned that you are falling prey to such trivial strokes, as you call them, from people who mean nothing to you. You react to the smallest thing. When people that mean everything to you try to give you strokes, you slough them off and don't react. I too fall for the trivial ones, and they are really fun to get, but I also know from experience, which I think you lack, that you are unique in the world. We used to marvel that we thought the same thought at the same second. I've been attracted to and gotten to know what seems to be oodles of men of all types, sizes, and backgrounds. In most cases, after 5 minutes, I have no use for these people. In some cases, it takes quite a while before I write them off as no use to me, but the first moment I saw you, I liked you. Spoke to you, it stayed. Wrote to you, it grew. Dated you, got only better and better. No one else I've ever met before or since was as right as you. I really value that and recognize that you cannot be easily or at all replaced. Trivial strokes are fun, but I can't do without the real ones. You seem to think they're interchangeable.
Aww.
Thought. Writing and receiving love letters was a tremendously important factor in the development of our love. I think we both enjoyed it.
Okay, see, this is where I have more sympathy for Betty again too, as a criminal who's been convicted, in comparison to Sarah, because Sarah could never show this amount of genuine emotion. Now, whether she's feeling sorry for herself or, sorry for what she's lost, this is a genuine, real, she's coming from a place of sadness, which is at best, Sarah can oh, you want me to be sad? I don't play that game. I'll tell you what I'm sad for is for how everyone let me down. This is real sadness. It may be coming from, not the greatest place either, but as long as we've been doing Sarah and Betty comparisons all trial, this is one where Betty you know what? This brings up another Sarah Boone thing. Your instincts are to want to feel bad for her looking like this. Like, regardless of everything you know she did, there's a part of your mirror neurons that are firing that are telling you, poor Betty. And, oh God, where was I going with that? I had to work in mirror neurons, and then I just patted myself on the back for it. Fuck. I don't know. Regardless, I feel bad instinctively just looking at her right now, and I can see how she garnered sympathy as opposed to, Sarah's tales of woe that garner no sympathy because she's such an unsympathetic looking person. Like, she can't even, come from a place of genuine sadness to fake it. What I see here from Betty, while she's hearing her own words be read to a psychiatrist, there's an authenticity here.
I know I did, and I look very much forward to resuming the practice. Now, when people date, often they meet a number of people, and after a while, they find out that they're either shallow or they don't like them or there's nothing there, and they move on. Is that correct?
Sure.
And you feel that what she's doing is saying here that she just rejects, just uses people and casts them away, rather than, you don't think this letter says that when I found something that was important to me, I formed a strong bond. You don't feel it says that. This letter represents to you her feelings that she rejects, just uses people and throws them away.
Well, I think primarily that letter shows her to be a normal person, as she is most of the time in most ways. There isn't that much wrong with her. On the other hand, even in the midst of this,
oh, I wish we saw her face when he said that. There isn't that much wrong with her. Some fucked up shit, but by and by, not a lot worse than majority of society.
Normal letter written to her husband, she makes what I would regard as an error in her intention to communicate how special he is and how perfect and unique their marriage is, when she conveys to him the fact that he's only one of oodles of men she's been attracted to, most of whom she's discarded as of no use. Because the inference that might be drawn from that is that she concluded he was of use to her.
So that's what you think. That's how you read that letter. That really what it is a slap in his face and telling him that.
No, I think it's meant to be an endearing, enchanting, you're my most special person letter. She happens to reveal herself a little more than might have been effective there.
So I'd say the biggest difference, because I'll agree with that not my lover Billie Jean says she's only sorry for herself, though. And I think that's very possible. And at the same time, that Sarah Boone feeling sorry for herself would still be faking it. Oh, you don't know how hard it is for me. I lie awake at nights, sometimes under the bed. What do you mean you sleep under the bed? That doesn't... I sleep under the bed. Like, that's how low I feel. I need to be right next to the ground. I can't keep my head above water. I have to keep it below water. Dr. Dietz is intense. That's a good call there too, Elizabeth. Betty has that sad face, and as it's starting to fade, she turns over and looks at the camera and then goes back to full sadness. And that's, I have alluded to that I think there's some of it is being channeled where she goes to places of deep inner sadness. But again, that's one of the things that makes me feel just that tiny bit more empathy for her than someone like Sarah, where I don't think there's an authentic feeling of sadness within her. With Betty, I think, well, I don't have to think. We've just had a doctor diagnose her on the stand with all 9 of the 5 or more needed narcissistic traits. But yeah, we'll go from there.
You talked about some of her needs in those personality as use of people. In other words, she would do things that are only good for her. That's how she perceives the world, is as if it's good for her, then that's how she does that.
Those aren't the only things she would do, but often her priorities reflected putting her needs, and in fact the needs reflecting these traits I've talked about, ahead of other priorities. But that isn't all there was to her. Most of the time she was behaving normally.
Well, she talked about needing a vacation in her marriage encounter, did she not?
Yes.
Where she says, I've been pestering for a long time that I need a vacation. Then what she says is, what I meant was I need to get you away from TV and work and barlata and booze to get you back to me. This has sort of fulfilled that, but I still need to have a family time. It could happen in our home if we could just turn off everything else and just being a lovely family for 2 days or a week or 2 weeks without any worldly obligations or duties for any of us.
That is exactly like Sarah saying, the music makes me fractious. So I said, how about we just turn it off? How about just me and you, just the 2 of us, just face to face, just us? How about that? And, because I thought he needed a change of scenery. I don't think, for the defense bringing it up, I don't think that is as good a thing as they think it is.
It'd be so relaxing and worthwhile, and we all need it. Maybe something you can relate to better is we need a sofa. Nothing else for our house. Everything else, and there's lots we want. We need a sofa so you and I can be physically close in the evenings and share the day's events and feelings so that we can go to bed in love. Not what we have now. By the time we go to bed, I'm full of resentment for the lack of closeness and communication during the evening. How can we make love to that? Now, when you're talking about her look for ideal love, is that what you were talking about?
Well, you didn't read it accurately. The end of that quotation is, how can I make love to that?
Okay.
That, for the most part, is a statement of how very good ideas for the marriage. Those are fine things that would help many marriages. But what she ends with is a dehumanizing statement about Dan. She goes,
full disclosure too, I smoke my pot after or while watching this, and I find that marijuana tends to make you feel more empathetic too. So if I'm already empathetic, maybe that's why I can get all misty over a murderer. Don't worry, I'm not going to send her any letters or offer to do a documentary about her or anything like that.
too far. It sounds sweet and sensitive and very nice up to that point.
So you would read into that when she talks about how they can improve their marriage, you read into that that's the sign of her disorders.
No, I think mostly it's normal and a good idea. I think a lot of marriages could profit from that kind of vacation and from planning the furniture so that if they're going to watch TV, they sit together. Those are good ideas. It's smart. And I didn't rely on that as evidence of pathology. However, when you look at the last sentence, it is a little troublesome that even as she tries to convey such very nice and sensitive and caring ideas, in comes the hostility of how can I make love to that?
100%. 100%. So even, and this is another similarity to Sarah, where she might start at a sentence with good intentions, but she can't put the period before she gets in a little dig.
And the purpose of going to the marriage encounter was to make the marriage better. Is that correct?
And that's,
Okay, that's what this is.
we were talking about SKR's reading of the notes. I'm going to go find that link again too. But Sarah Boone's notes app's notes to herself were very well illustrative of what we're what I'm pausing this video for right now.
Sustained.
You have no, did you read Elizabeth Broderick?
If you're on the replay crew, do make sure that you turn on the live chat replay. It usually takes about 12 hours after a live stream is ended. So if you're watching this, a day or two behind, it should be there. If there's ever a reference in the video and you're like, what the hell is he talking about? What link? What this? Who's A to B? Who's what's going on? Put the live chat replay on beside you. When you're not chatting, it's really easy to follow all the conversation, and if there's some back and forth, a lot of times it illuminates what the side chats are. So I definitely recommend that if you're on the replay crew. You can still futuristically be a part of the conversation, or at least see what the conversation was while we were all enjoying this. And if there's ever links posted, the links still work in the future. So if we talk about something and there's a link in the chat, you can pause the video, put that link in another window, and watch it when you're done, or go watch it and then come back to the video, because these are long videos. Sometimes it's just nice to see a new link with a break. You can go watch that, and YouTube will remember where you were when you were here. So click the video again, and boom, it's like, yeah, that's where I was.
There's testimony about why they went to the marriage encounter.
Yes.
Okay. Now, when somebody is narcissistic and histrionic, you would expect that from your diagnosis of the things that you would see, you might see self-importance. Is that correct?
Well, thank you, Elsie.
If someone who is narcissistic, there's one of the things you say is that there's self-importance.
People who are narcissistic often feel self-important. That's
Right now, the pinned message is the SKR video on the Notes app, which, as we were discussing it earlier, lots of hardcore Sarah Boone people here. Not everybody has seen that video. It's only 50 minutes long, so it's a short by SKR standards. But I remember a few very interesting parts of it that made me want to go back and revisit it. So by all means, put that in your history, because we've only got 15 to 20 minutes left in today's show. So nice to have a little bit of backup content if YouTube doesn't suggest anything you're more interested in.
Concern, for instance, about how people are going to perceive them when they're dead and gone, how people are going to look at them, how they want to,
dead
how other
and
people
gone.
perceive them.
Dead,
in other words, what
gone.
face they're putting on and how people are going to look at them.
yes, that's right.
People who are narcissistic are concerned with worldly goods a lot of times. Isn't that correct? They want to have wealth.
In 1991 in America, that's a very common way it's displayed. Yes.
Okay. Well, if someone is narcissistic when they're younger, it might have to do with wealth. Only wanting a sofa is not wanting lots of material wealth, is it?
Wanting a sofa? No.
Okay. Now, you mentioned something about a threatening letter from Elizabeth Broderick and what she read into that letter. Remember that?
Yes.
That testimony. Obviously,
Eddie wanted $10,000 coats, designer dresses, special rings that, if it wasn't the ring, don't give me a ring at all. And the defense brings up that she wanted a modest couch. And it's like, she just wanted a couch. Well, yeah, the couch was fine. Nothing wrong with her wanting a couch.
what people read into things in relationships, a lot of times depend on what the relationship there is, what they have between them. Isn't that correct? Am I making sense to you at all?
Sometimes.
Okay. It's probably my narcissistic tendency.
Oh, his timing is fantastic.
A lot of times depend on what the relationship there is, what they have between them. Isn't that correct? Am I making sense to you at all?
Sometimes.
Okay. It's probably my narcissistic tendency.
I'm not making any diagnosis.
They're not making any sense. But
You're using words that are from the English language. Sometimes together, I have no idea what you're talking about. Love this guy. Play it again, Sam. And he's so stern, and just like that, he's love this guy.
a lot of times depend on what the relationship there is, what they have between them. Isn't that correct? Am I making sense to you at all?
Sometimes.
Okay. It's probably my narcissistic tendency.
I'm not making any diagnosis.
They're not making any sense. But that, in other words, some people have the experience that you can go see your mother for Thanksgiving and all she has to do is say 2 words and you can come off the chair because you know the whole history behind those 2 words. And everyone else looks at you and says, what a nut. He screamed and yelled at his mother and she only said 2 words, or she only said, aren't you going to eat the potatoes? Now, sometimes when you're
Tony Soprano could have been a varsity athlete. Ma, if you bring up the varsity athlete thing again, I swear to God.
judging how people react to things, you're judging the history. You have to know some history behind them. Is that correct?
That can be true.
Okay. So when somebody looks at somebody who might be in a relationship where the person can say things very nicely, if it's a domineering, controlling relationship, they might respond knowing some history of what that person really feels like. I mean, what's important to them.
Like telling Joe Pesci to grab his shine box. Would
you agree with that? That might bring out. Someone might read something that to you might be innocuous, to them might have lots of meanings because of the way the person's dealt with them in the past.
Yes.
Okay. So for instance, did you see photo number 69, which is Dan Broderick's house?
69, nice.
Yes, I've seen this.
Okay. And you don't know, did you know whether the one thing that Elizabeth wanted out of the marriage encounter, whether that was something that Dan ended up with, the couch?
Objection as to what Dan ended up with.
Yeah, overruled. You answer that.
Yeah, Mandy, I think when I do this playlist, when it's finished, I should probably rank the episodes like must watch, or maybe we'll just, I'll even do like a companion video that I put at the beginning, like welcome to the Betty Broderick Marathon. If you're only going to watch 5 videos, watch these. If you're only going to skip through and watch timestamps, or, but yeah, some kind of a guide to the series, because big investment for everyone to watch minute to minute, like Winter Lake, who I like to bring up because I know she's about 15 days behind and she's going to be thrilled to hear her name in the final 5 to 6 broadcasts of this marathon. But and Winter Lake is the one that, and the reason I bring her up is because her question about Sarah Boone, and has there anyone been more audacious in demanding alimony while in prison? Betty was incarcerated. She was in custody when she asked for 2 months of back pay on alimony. And this is, I haven't confirmed it. I've seen it at least in one source anyway. But claiming that Dan was 2 months behind in alimony, and so pay that, even though she was in custody due to his murder. So pretty audacious, and looking up that connection made me see a lot of other connections between Betty and Sarah. And then the whole spectacle of court TV televised trial, this being the first year of court TV being in as a thing, made this a very interesting trial rewatch to do. So thank Winter Lake for the inspiration, and yeah, my thanks as well. We'll continue with the last 15 minutes or so of today's broadcast, and then definitely be continuing with Dr. Dietz tomorrow. We might even start at the, do you understand me? Sometimes. That very well might be the start of tomorrow's episode, and then we'll just rewatch the whole 15 minutes and go.
Do you know whether that's something that ended up happening? If you do or you don't, I don't know.
The only break, he's almost like Jimmy Fallon, like he's a little pleased with himself after he makes a good joke, because he's still got a little smirk. Like, yeah, Larissa says he's so poised, I don't think he can be broken. Quite the opposite of Shannon Burgess and James Welcher, who to me were overpaid bullshit. Those were the people testifying at the Karen Reed trial that I remember Shannon Burgess was currently pursuing a bachelor in whatever science that he not only hadn't pursued, but the college that he said he was pursuing it at didn't offer that program. But he went bright red at the stand, and I think he's doing a bit of a Betty right now. But that said, you can see Mr. Dietz himself is fairly flush, so some of that could be just due to the filters that were used by Court TV, because every day the hues are slightly different. There was footage from the same day, but just because it was different cuts of the video, the filter was different, and the prosecutor's belt went from a crimson red to a more of a dark fuchsia.
You're asking, but I don't know if one of those couches is the one that came from the encounter request.
There was, did you read the diary entries that talked about where Betty wrote in her diaries about Dan demanding lists and Dan wanting things, and her saying, I keep giving him the list and he keeps writing me these letters asking where they are. He won't talk to me.
And in fact, what we'll do is go back before we finish this one. The very last thing we'll watch is him asking, do I make sense to you? Just so that the video is going to be paused there for tomorrow's show.
I would ask if he's trying to confront the doctor with certain diary pages, you get the diary page and show it to the doctor.
If this cross-examination,
See if he recalls it.
do you recall that?
What was the question again?
Do you recall in some diary pages where Betty was talking about the fact that she gives Dan the list that he asked for and he doesn't respond to her?
I recall talking about lists. I don't recall the particular passage.
Now, when you read the diaries were in fact 9 volumes, isn't that correct?
Yes.
And Elizabeth Broderick's writing changed dramatically from over that. When you look at the diaries and go from...
That's correct, Larissa. At the beginning of court, there was at least 6 or 7 fans in the courtroom, and the timing of the trial, it spanned Halloween, because there was Halloween decorations on the court reporter's desk, which also means it spanned the anniversary of the killings. We don't know which day in particular, was the anniversary of the murders, but I would imagine right about now we've got to be mid-November, so maybe it's just naturally cooled off to a point that the fans are no longer needed, but I could see the late October heat wave or something like that. Might even be worth looking up the weather patterns and reporting on that in the next video.
The beginning of the diaries to the end, there's some dramatic changes in her style of writing, is there not?
From time to time there are, yes.
Okay, and near the end of the diary, it gets to be where it's a lot bigger, her handwriting. In fact, some pages, she might only have 4 words on a page, isn't that right?
There are times it's that way.
And there are times when, are you familiar with how she wrote the diaries?
I
With a pen?
believe I know what she said about that.
Okay, and what's your understanding of what she said about that?
That at various times she has said that she began making what she considered journals at the advice of an attorney. She couldn't recall most of the times.
This is almost exactly like Sarah's journals then. I stand corrected. I was giving them credit. Betty's just better because she put in dates and times. But if she didn't create them until the attorney said it would help if you had some journals that backed up your story. Oh, let me just get to work. Not very compelling.
She said that an attorney advised her to do it. Which attorney it was? I understand that some of the entries were made contemporaneous with the events being described, and that others were made retrospectively. That is, some were made the very day things happened, or soon thereafter. Some were made at vastly different times. Inserts were made, additions and changes were made.
13 Mandy, I think you're asking about who Karen Reed is, and she was accused of killing her police officer boyfriend, but the case uncovered more about corruption within the Boston Police Department and investigators, because the death happened on another more senior police officer's property, former police officer, still current in law enforcement, and all of the details of the investigation were so murky that whether she did it or not, it's really kind of impossible with the evidence that exists to prove anyone did it. So, if the point was to convict her because they had a gut feeling, well, they screwed that up, because by manufacturing evidence and hiring bunk witnesses, they've basically freed her if she did have anything to do with it. That said, from what did get presented, it does seem more likely that there's other things at play, but this isn't so much about the Karen Reed trial. It is interesting, though. I recommend, there's a site called Next Witness, and they just do compilations of all the law tubers talking about a trial. Next Witness, might be called Next Witness 2.0. If somebody in the chat knows about it, that's a mod, go ahead and post a link to the channel. But that's a great way to catch up on tons of different trials, because it shows like 30 seconds of lawyer, and then 2 minutes of Emily D. Baker, and then a minute from Brother Counsel, and then a minute from Runkle the Bailey. And sometimes there'll be people you don't recognize too. And just a good way to get a snapshot of a trial. You can go back and look at the full trial coverage if you want to see more.
The intention was not so much to be a running account of the current events, but rather to try to create a document that would contain a great deal of information so it wouldn't be lost.
And a lot of it was about, not necessarily about her day-to-day feelings, but about what was happening in the divorce, wasn't it?
Yes.
Okay. And did you ever look to see how many times she would have consecutive days written down? Was it a lot of the time or very little where you would be able to look at 1 month and have January 1st, January 2nd? Or was that very unusual to have that?
There weren't too many times where one had entries.
Janet True, I wonder if you're talking about Benjamin Spock or from Star Trek.
Many days in a row.
In fact, most of the time there was very little time where you had exactly daily entries. Most of them were interspersed with going back months that were missing.
Yes, that's right.
And the diaries ended in 1988, didn't they?
Yes.
So you weren't able to tell anything after 1988 as to how she felt about certain things, from the diary entries anyways.
Not from diaries, that's right.
Okay. Now, you talked about some of the things that she had rages about. Again, sometimes you have to put things into context to understand why someone might be angry about certain things. Isn't that correct?
Yes, that is sometimes necessary.
Okay. And you alluded to the Danny tapes and some things that were happening with Ruth Roth and her feelings about that. Did you, from her diary, were you aware at the time that she was supposed to have her children over Easter that her brothers and cousins and their families came to visit and were staying at her house, and she was planning a vacation with the whole family?
I know there was such a time. I don't know what year you're talking about, though.
Okay. And you know that at the last minute at that time that she was told that she was not going to have her children with her family that had come from back east to visit?
I know about an occasion where that's what she says happened to.
Okay. And you knew that that was something that, again, to look and say why a person might be angry or upset, or why they might feel a certain way about something, of course you have to put that in context, do you not?
Depends on what it is you want to know about it.
Okay. Well, obviously, when you talk about someone having some kind of rage, there are times when people have rage for no reason at all. There's other times that people are very upset because things happen that are unwarranted, let's say, or they think are unwarranted.
Yes, there are many reasons people get angry.
Okay. You went through a number of things about Elizabeth Broderick going through the the fact that she was looking for Dan and Linda about what their lifestyle was and talked about about envy. And this shows how bad she was in, or at least how strong her disorder was.
Objection, I this is testimony.
Your Honor, I thought we had an agreement.
Mr. Burkhoff, supposed to do objection.
I thought we had.
Doctor understands that. I don't have any objection to the answer.
I love how he even, because this is a psychiatrist, so he kind of knows what's going on, the little head games here. He can tell that Jack Early's annoyed, like, I thought we had an agreement. You know what? I might just close it on that. We'll watch that one more time, and then we'll go back and watch the left. 5.
And this shows how
The agreement is, and it's valid. Only one lawyer is supposed to do objections. So if Carrie Wells is doing the objections and, doing the lawyer for this witness, then it should be her. And if it's Mr. Burkhoff, I'm sorry. I don't know how I get those two confused. Then it's supposed to be him.
bad she was in, or at least how strong her disorder was.
Objection, I this is testimony.
Your Honor, I thought we had an agreement.
Mr. Burkhoff, supposed to do objection.
If the doctor understands that, I don't have any objection to the answer.
Go ahead.
Do you understand it, or is this another one of mine?
Next time I make, go ahead.
That's actually a
The,
perfect button up.
when you-
Is this another one of mine? Okay, so let's go back to the little laugh we all had. That's a look too.
You mentioned something about a threatening letter from Elizabeth Broderick and what she read into that letter. Remember that?
Yes.
That testimony. Obviously, what people read into things in relationships, a lot of times depend on what the relationship there is, what they have between them. Isn't that correct? Am I making sense to you at all?
Sometimes.
Okay. It's probably my narcissistic tendency.
Okay. That's a great way to start tomorrow. So we're halfway through this video. Let's just take a look where tomorrow would be. Tomorrow's 4 hours, so it's going to be a long show tomorrow. But that is
Into
fine.
things in relationships, a lot of times depend on what the relationship there is, what they have between them. Isn't that correct? Am I making sense to you at all?
Sometimes.
Okay. It's probably my
Just milking it. All right, let's go to full screen. We've wished all the April birthdays a happy birthday. I'm off to a family event. Let's see. There we go. We've got the Smiling Park Dietz on the stand. I'm here in the house. I've learned. So what I've been doing is doing my little tagline. I'm fine. You're Dan D. This is the end of the live stream. Boom. And I press the button. I finally listened to the end of one of my live streams, and it cuts me off at you're fine. You're fine. So now I'm just going to have to hold the frame. So I'm going to count it out just so I can see how long it is until it actually goes, and then I'll change the countdown to match when it stops. But that's how I'll be ending today. So it's not day 17 continued. It's day 18 over. Let's change that. Stickler for details. I noticed, I was so embarrassed. I had spelling mistakes on 2 separate days of words I know how to spell, like testimony. I had spelled wrong in the bar scrolling all day long. Testimony, I think I called it. So embarrassing, but when you're your own producer, editor, graphics guy, all of that, it's you get what you get. I'm getting better. That's the point. Day 18 over. Good morning. It's morning somewhere. Morning somewhere. All right. You guys are fine, and I'm Dan D. This is it? Is there anything else I wanted to show? One more thing. Yes, I did want to show some of this.
Would continue to. Betty Broderick remembers that.
going to skip a little bit. This is Betty on the stand in 1990, and she's a little bit, I think she's better, less rehearsed.
Now, more.
It's there where they finally have the testimony.
Police, and she wound up in county mental health.
Hi, you've reached the Broderick. Dan and I are out and about, so leave your message in the beep. Thanks.
When Elizabeth Broderick heard her husband's girlfriend.
Oh, that's.
Do you pay Linda to sleep with you? Goodbye.
I didn't have Rhett do that, but I heard Rhett do that, and I
There we go.
heard for years that Rhett did that.
You were right there when Rhett made that call, weren't you?
No.
You dared him to make the call.
No.
Wells kept attacking Broderick's.
So this wasn't from the trial we saw. There's Lee. I think that we did see her. She hired Betty as a child care worker. See Mary looking more comfortable there. Like she's got more room to move. This is a little bit more roomy courtroom than the original.
Jack Early also put on the stand Broderick's maid of a dozen years, who recalled how Broderick cried constantly when she didn't have her children.
No dormía en las noches llorando, llorando.
All the time, in the morning, in the afternoon, at night, when there were calls from the children, she would spend the night crying and crying.
All right. That will be the bonus coverage for tonight. It's been a fine and dandy chat. Let's just shout out a few people that are here in the chat. Billie Jean made it right to the end. 13 Mandy is probably still watching, is a little bit behind. By the way, if you're behind, the live chat might disappear, so be ready for that. But it will reappear in about 12 hours. So if you want to pause the video just because you've lost the live chat, that's fine. You can come back to it tomorrow and watch it before I go live. Also, if you're interested in hyping the video, you can't hype it until it's fully processed. So I appreciate it, but at the same time, save it for some other creators for now, more topical stuff. And you can give me hypes in the future. Bank those hypes for me. But share them with your favorite creators. The hypes are really good. If you're trying to help out the creators, whenever somebody does something that's like kind of newsworthy or, they're the first or something like that, and you've seen a video, those are the best ones to hype because when other people see them, they're more likely to click them. So any hypes help a creator, but ideally, if it's something where you're like, oh, I know other people are going to enjoy seeing this, give your hypes to those ones from those creators, and it's more likely to have the boost that they're looking for. So if you're fine, I'm Dan D. This is 10 seconds from the end of the broadcast. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4. Chat will remain open for 3 minutes. No, 2.